7:30. I'd like to call to order the March 27, 2025 Old Bridge Township Planning Board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Porcelli is in for Daniel tonight. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. De Palma?
Here.
Mr. Lenning? Mr. Hagopian?
Present.
Ms. Cannon? Yes. Mr. Renna?
Here.
Mr. Petty?
Here.
Mr. McIsaac? No. Ms. Masella? Absent. Mr. Brennan? Mr. Ferrara? Chairman Lauer?
Yes, here.
Mr. Chairman, as a new procedure that we're implementing moving forward, we're going to swear in our board professionals before every planning board meeting. So if I ask the professionals, if you please rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the minutes of February 27, 2025. Do we have any adjustments, comments, deletions? Okay, can I get a motion to approve that?
Move it.
I'll second.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Ms. Cannon? Mr. Renna?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan? Yes. Mr. Ferrara? Yes. Chairman Lauer?
Yes. Next, we have a consistency review. Our planner, Vina?
Sure. Good evening, planning board members. I'm just going to combine both of these resolutions, and I'll talk about them. So we have a process in which a developer can come to the town and ask for a pre-application meeting prior to filing an application with either the planning board or the zoning board. The pre-application meeting typically is attended by the township engineer, myself, and the zoning officer. What has been happening is there were fees set in for pre-application fees, and there was an escrow deposit that was to be taken. In the past, the planning office used to charge a flat $600 fee. Where that $600 came from, I don't know. But when I got hired and I looked at the ordinance and I was like, wait a minute, nowhere it says $600, but more so over, the ordinance says that the township officials cannot charge their time. So then it just didn't make sense. We looked at other municipalities, and all municipalities for a pre-application fee, they charge somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000 for a pre-application. And that, whatever is left from that money that is collected gets transferred into the development escrow when the application is filed. So any unused amount is transferred to the development escrow. What I have noticed ever since I stopped charging fees because of the inconsistency in the ordinance is every person comes in, asks for a pre-application meeting, and some of them are like hand-drawn sketches. And because there's no fee associated, it takes up a lot of my time. Some of them don't even come to fruition. Sometimes developers come back with with concepts like 2-3 times to get an opinion. it's wasting our time and it doesn't really help much. We want only serious projects to come forward for pre-application meeting. Anybody is free to call me and ask me questions, but to set up a meeting and take up three professionals' time, we all are busy reviewing actual development applications. And again, other towns, neighboring towns, every town that I have checked in has a fee associated. They have a process. The other thing is scheduling of these meetings. It becomes very difficult because both Nicole and I'm busy back to back in meetings. So now, by this new ordinance, we have an assigned time. It will be the first Wednesday and the third Wednesday of the month in the morning. So our calendars will be blocked for that, and anybody who wishes, who pays the fees, submits a formal concept plan, will be then allowed to schedule that meeting. So it is more formalized process, and I think anything that we do to streamline development applications is consistent with the municipal land use law as well as the master plan. So I highly recommend that you pass the resolution.
Any questions on this proposal? All right, any questions? Are we taking two votes?
Yes, let's do 2 votes.
Okay, on the master plan consistency, I'm looking for a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
And Chairman, just to be sure, that's the consistency review with regard to ordinance 25-12. That's the one amending the pre-application and technical review committee provisions of section 250-12.
That's correct.
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Ms. Cannon? Mr. Renna?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan? Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Chairman Lauer?
Yes. Okay, on the master plan consistencies, any questions on that one? Okay, I'm looking for approval for the master plan consistency review ordinance, code, Township Code, Chapter 250-104. Have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Second.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Ms. Cannon? Mr. Renna?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara? Chairman Lauer?
Yes. Okay, next, we have applications 13-2022P. MBM at Old Bridge is asking for a continuance tonight to a new date, which we haven't established yet.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they submitted a letter this afternoon requesting that it be adjourned to a special meeting to be scheduled. So new notice will be provided if anyone's here on that application, the MBM at Old Bridge SPE, Phase 1 LLC. That is going to be adjourned to a new date. We don't have the date yet, so you will be provided new public notice if you're here for that. And they will advertise as required by law, but that has to be scheduled through the township as to when that special meeting would be available to the board members and available to the applicant.
Okay.
If I may just add, board members, we received this letter late in the afternoon. So tomorrow you will hear from my office with a couple of dates for a special meeting. Please respond with your availability so that I can get back and they can schedule. This application has been in front of the board for the last 2.5, almost 3 years, because I had some serious concerns about the way it was planned. They have worked with us. We created an ordinance requiring a lot of recreational elements and newer building styles. They are now ready to be heard by the board. So please respond to the email that comes out your way.
Very good. The next application is Vision at Old Bridge, 51-2023P, a major preliminary site plan with C variances, and we're going to run the meeting a little differently tonight.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we know, given the application, everyone was here last meeting, this is being continued from the February 27th meeting. And the board understands and wants to make sure everyone gets, coming out this evening, that we get through the application and we get to hear all of, not just questions of the witnesses, but all of your comments and testimony. So what we're going to do procedurally wise is we're going to have the applicant present all of their witnesses, they'll answer questions of the board, but we're going to hold off on questions of the public to the end. So that way we make sure that we get through that, so that not only you can ask your questions, but you can make your statements, you can make your comments and provide testimony. We want to see if we make sure we get that tonight. We don't want to make you guys have to come back out again. That's why we're kind of switching a little bit up the procedure, but it works to your benefit in this instance because we make sure we get to that testimony. So just please be aware that you might have questions of the witnesses. Please make notes. Be prepared. Hold off on those until we get through all of the witnesses, and then you'll have your opportunity to ask those questions.
Welcome, Mr. Clauser.
Thank you. For the record, Peter Clauser with the firm Heilbron Pape on behalf of your applicant, Vision Old Bridge, Roman numeral 4, Urban Renewal. This is a continued application from last month. We were here. We had a short period of window to work in last time, and we presented our engineer's testimony. I have 3 additional witnesses this evening. We have our architect, our traffic expert, and our planner. However, I've asked Scott Turner to return. When we were here, we were asked to prepare a cross-section of the view between 2 buildings, one of our proposed buildings and an existing Madison Crossing building. So we prepared that, and I need Scott to present that. So that was one of the discrepancies that existed last time we were here with regard to the relationship between the elevations of the 2 buildings. One of the others was some statements were made that the applicant had not had any communications with Madison Crossing prior to presenting the application to the board. That was inaccurate. I presented a letter to the chairman and board members, and I identified the prior communications. There were a number of communications between the applicant's representatives and Madison's board. In fact, one of the applicant's representatives attended a Zoom meeting with the board. Nothing came from the communications, but the idea that we didn't speak to any of the members of the board at Madison Crossing is incorrect, and I wanted this planning board to know that there was communication. So then the second issue was there were some statements made that after construction, our buildings will tower over the existing buildings. There were statements like we would be looking down into someone's bedroom, and that's simply not accurate based on the elevation and construction that's out at the site. So we've asked our engineer, actually it was a suggestion from Vina, that we prepare a cross-section between the 2 closest areas of the buildings. Keep in mind our setback variance is not along the entire line of the property, it's a portion of the building. So I've asked Scott to prepare that, and I'd like to have him present that. Now, Mr. Turner was accepted as a professional engineer last time we were here, and he was sworn. I would remind him he's under oath. If it's the board's procedure to re-swear him, please do. If not, I'll just ask if we could bring up that cross-section and have Scott take us through what we're looking at.
Yes, as you notice, we're swearing in our own professionals every meeting. I think just for procedural purposes moving forward, we're going to re-swear, even though we understand that he may still be under oath. We're just going to re-swear him in this evening.
Sure.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And can you just please state your name to remind the board?
Scott Turner, Turner, principal with Menlo Engineering Associates.
Thank you.
Scott, 2 things. There's the exhibit that's up in front of the board, so I wish if you could take them through that. And also, I believe you've had some communications with the township's landscape architect, and so if you could describe that exhibit, what it shows, and a little bit about the landscaping that you worked on.
Sure, I
We
can
do, I think exhibit-wise, we're on exhibit A3, so if this is a new exhibit, we should mark this as A3 moving forward.
Yes, this is a new exhibit. It's entitled "The Villas at Merle's Corner, Cross-Section AA Exhibit," and it's dated March 19th, 2025, prepared by my office.
If you need that, you got one? Okay.
We're good?
Yep, yeah, go forward, please.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see all of you again. Before we get to that exhibit, I just want to briefly explain what had happened over the course of the last few weeks after our last hearing. Your professionals requested that we take a look at doing something a little bit different within that buffer area between our site and the Madison Crossing property boundary. We had discussions with your professionals. We had a meeting with your professionals. It was pointed out that they would like to see a different type of landscaping plan within that area. So what we did is we made those modifications based on those comments. One of the things we did do is we relocated that retaining wall that's located on our property 5 feet inward from the property boundary line. So it's 5 feet closer to our proposed buildings from what it was last hearing. So we have an additional 5 feet of space to work within to address the modifications that were requested in regards to the buffer planting plan. So the buffer plantings now provide for a more diverse selection of plant material, provides evergreen trees, ornamental trees, and deciduous trees. Also now includes evergreen shrubs, which allows us to provide a more naturalized and varied layout, which in turn, in our opinion, would increase the aesthetics and visual interest. And again, that was all at the request of the board's professionals and working with our landscape architects. The evergreen trees that we've specified now include eastern red cedar, emerald sentinel, eastern red cedars, Leyland cypress, Serbian spruce, and green giant arborvitaes, and we've specified all of them to be planted at a height of 8 to 10 feet. The proposed flowering trees within that buffer include crepe myrtle and serviceberry, and they will all be planted at 9 to 10 feet tall at installation. In addition, what we've done in that planting plan, and it's no longer linear, it's a little bit more varied. There's staggered rows, and interspersed within those trees are a variety of shrub species that will provide the infill and further enhanced screening. And those shrubs include inkberry holly, ninebark, clethra, and northern bayberry, and they all are planted at a 3.5 to 4 foot planting height. And again, we worked a couple of plans and went back and forth with your board's professionals, and at this point, and I won't speak for them, of course, but I believe that we have a concept here that they are comfortable with and satisfied their comments. With respect to the cross-section, Ms. Sawant asked us to put together this cross-section for this night's hearing. So what we have here is on the left-hand side, we have the villas building. We have the property line that's situated right down the center of the exhibit. And then on the right-hand side of the exhibit, we have the Madison Crossing building. Up on top is a key map, and in the key map is the cross-section designation. It basically cuts through the closest building for Madison Crossing and the rear of our closest building as well. What you'll notice, however, in the Madison Crossing building is we have there, where the cross-section was cut, that section of their building is set back 39 feet from the property line. And then behind it, you can see here where their portion of the building encroaches closer to our property line at 25 feet, which is what we previously testified at the last hearing. Off those buildings, we have decks, and then outside their walkout basement, they have a patio. So off the 39-foot edge of their building, their deck and their patio is approximately 29 feet away from our property line, which is this here. And then from the projection where the building is 25 feet from the property boundary, their deck and patio space is 15 feet from the boundary. More importantly than that, however, in my opinion, is the height differential between our buildings and that one. There's two particular buildings in question for Madison Crossing. You can see our building, if you set a datum at 0 feet on our first floor, and you work your way up, there's a second floor and a third floor. Our third floor elevation is at 21.6 feet. When you go to the Madison Crossing homes, compared to the 0 foot datum elevation, their walkout basement is at 16.5 feet. So their building, their walkout basement condition is 16.5 feet taller or higher in elevation than our first floor. And then you work up first floor, it's approximately 10 feet from that. and then another 10 feet roughly to get to their, what I would call their second floor living space. So when you look at the line of sights, and that's what these represent here, the individuals inside our building, and then the individuals that are either in their building or on their deck, the Kona vision is cited here. I do believe with certainty that there is far more of an impact from the Madison Crossing homes to the New Villas neighborhood as opposed to the other way around. And given the fact that in the middle between both developments, there is this significant and substantial evergreen planting space.
Thank you, Scott. The purpose of Scott's testimony was to demonstrate our work with your landscape architect and then also to really show what the elevations look like out there and that our buildings, although inside the setback in certain areas, do not tower over and look into the existing buildings at Madison Crossing.
Is he finished with his testimony?
He is. He's available for the board's questions.
Okay, I'd like to open up to our professionals.
I'll start off. I just want to expound on the landscape treatment that they proposed with this submission. It's true, they worked with us, and I don't know if you recall, but initially they proposed a straight line of trees, which basically created a wall. I guess it screens, but it's kind of boring, right? And what happens when you get a line of trees, basically the same species, they grow into each other, they kind of, going after the same sunlight, same moisture, everything else, and it kind of inhibits the growth. So what we did, we asked them to come up with and use different species, and the reason we did that because they have different widths. You have more broad ones, narrow ones, so that allows you to create spaces. You can stagger it, open up areas, and in those open areas, they're going to be putting in some flowering trees and shrubs, which, again, it provides a variety and seasonal interest. We've got some of the flowering trees bloom in the spring. The other one blooms, the crepe myrtle blooms all summer long. The same thing with the shrubs. You get the early viburnums, and you get the nine bark sort of in the summer and fall. The Miraca, the northern bayberry it's berries, but it's a nice leaf texture. Same thing with the ilex, the inkberries. And then you got the ruby slice, which is a deciduous shrub, which again is summery, like late spring. So things are going to be changing all throughout the seasons, and we thought that would be a nice look for the residents, to go out on their decks or patios and have something interesting to see. And the other, I guess, aspect that's going to make this thing more beneficial is that we talked about implementing drip irrigation. I mean, very important. I mean, everybody probably remembers last summer's drought, how it was so hot. And it just, when you plant things the first year, it's really critical to keep all that watered. So if they put that in there, that's going to promote the growth. And even in subsequent years, then it's going to really make the growth more rapid and more healthy plants. And that, between staggering and spacing some of the plants out and giving it more room, is going to, I think, create a really attractive buffer in there.
Okay, thank you. Rakesh or Vina?
I don't have any questions for the engineer, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have any other comments. I thought at the last meeting, after hearing the residents, there was so much concern about these buildings towering over the homes that I thought it was critical to have a site section that really explains the height difference. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. You can see how the grade change and where the proposed building sits, where the existing buildings are, and how the landscaping will be able to provide screening. Yes, we did work with the developers team along with Tim, to come up with this landscape plan. And actually, we have in the crowd our forester. He has reviewed the plans to this morning. I had a conversation with him, and he's there to answer any questions. But when speaking to Gary, Gary said that he reviewed the plans and he did not have any additional comments. The plans were satisfactorily done. But he's here for any questions or any comments the board would have.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, that I just wanted to mention is that one of the concerns that we had mentioned at the last hearing was the location of the retaining wall with relation to the property line. One of the concerns that I'd expressed to Mr. Turner was the ability to construct that wall, and also the ability to have landscaping at the top of that wall, given the limited space. So the applicant has actually pushed the wall further away from the property line, so as to provide enough space where they can actually construct the wall without having any kind of encroachments onto the adjoining property, and also provide space to have the staggered plantings that Vina and Tim were actually discussing.
Okay, thank you. Gary, do you have any comments you would like to make? Okay, the board members, anybody on my left have, go ahead, Ed.
I was just wondering, there must be some growth there now, trees, shrubs, indigenous species that are there. Can you hear me? Is it on? It says it's on, okay. So there must be some growth there now. So I was just wondering, has a survey been taken? Has any of those existing trees and shrubs be saved?
The survey did locate the wood's edge. The matter of construction for the retaining wall and the regrading that would have to occur on top of that retaining wall honestly doesn't really lend itself to, providing any of that existing growth that may be there to remain. I think it's more of a benefit to, in this particular area where the wall is 15 feet away from the property boundary and some of the other areas, is to clear that area from what is there and plant this newly created buffer planting plan, which frankly will be a more attractive plan than what's there today. There'll be no trees cleared beyond the property limits, obviously, but it's due to the construction that's required.
What do you think the time frame is for you to plant that barrier? I mean, it's going to be a process that you're going to be building and...
Yeah, it'll be a process. It's not the first thing that goes in, but I'll tell you, it won't be the last either. It's probably, once you're in and you start, rough grading the property, one of the first things that do go in are these retaining walls and then the stormwater management utilities. So it won't be the last thing that goes in. Once that wall gets put in, and if it's within the season, they can start planting that buffer.
Any idea how long it's going to take for that to fill in? I mean, you show a tree there that's got to be about 25 or 30 feet tall.
Right. They usually grow about a foot, conservatively, they grow about a foot a year. Usually, more than that, but that's roughly what we always estimate, about a foot a year.
So
And if we're
what-
planting them at 9 to 10 feet, the flowering trees and then the evergreens at 8 to 10, it'll take 10 years or so for them to become fully grown,
About 10 years. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's keep it down here. Next, any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, we're waiting for this to be mature. In about 10 years, these people have to be living there and looking at the buildings. Why can't we get something that's already matured? That we are going to get the buffer, everything going on all at once, instead of waiting 10 years for the trees and the bushes to grow, number one. Number two, after you plant it, that's great. I mean, it looks beautiful over there. Who's going to maintain it?
It'll be
Are
the-
you guys going to have sprinkler systems that are going to be maintained?
Yeah, there'll be a
that
drip
going forward?
irrigation system on top of that wall to maintain that buffer plantings, and there'll be an HOA who will hire a landscape firm to come in and do
water it?
do the work. And there'll be a bond in place to make sure that they survive for a period of time, and then it'll be up to the homeowners association to make sure that they survive.
Because I heard the irrigation was going to be for the first year so they could grow quickly, if I'm not mistaken. But is that going to be continuous?
It's going to be permanent. I mean, once you put it in, you should keep it, right? Because you never know. I mean, the first year is the most critical, but subsequent years you could have droughts also. So, I mean, it should be a permanent thing. I mean, it's very efficient, doesn't use a lot of water. It gets underneath the mulch, gets into the root system. So it's a really good thing to have.
Oh, I understand, but I'm saying if everything dies, I mean, are we in a position where If it dies and it doesn't look good and it's not a buffer for the families that are going to be living there, will be replacing it. Because everything will die eventually if it's not on top of it. You could have your people that are going to go in there, take care of it. If they slack, if it's hot, there's going to be issues with that.
It's like any other development, it's the landscape maintenance contractor and the HOA will be responsible for maintaining that, and the irrigation system will help, for sure.
One of the things, too, that we can do is we can always grant the township a landscape buffer easement, and if the township felt that the HOA was not maintaining it appropriately, they would have the right but not the obligation to step in.
Can I interject on that? So one of the things that we require as part of any approval that this board gives or the zoning board gives is performance bonds being posted and maintenance bonds being posted that require the developer to obviously install it per the approved plan, and then maintenance bond to make sure that the actual landscaping takes. The buffer also becomes part of the approval. So if it does die, the township zoning officer has the ability to actually enforce on the property owner the requirement to actually replace any vegetation and repair any issues as far as grading and things like that goes, regardless of whether there's an easement. We'd prefer that that not be the case, because it is the developer's responsibility, the property owner's responsibility, and the township has that ability to enforce that going forward.
I just want to know if there's any way that we could get the mature trees there and the bushes, as opposed to waiting 10 years to give them the buffer.
So the issue with that, and I'm probably the fourth most qualified person to speak of that amongst your professionals, fifth actually, counting Vina too. But I'll talk anyway. The issue with with mature plantings is viability. The larger the plants are, the less viable they are, and less likely they are to actually take. So the idea of having mature trees planted, it's just not a feasible, practical thing to actually get them to take. They can't be more than a certain size, because they're just not going to be able to survive beyond the initial planting time.
You have to keep in mind that when they dig up these plants, they take a lot of roots. So now you've got this big tree that used to have a pretty broad root system. Now it's a very small.
You have a big bulb.
Right. So, so it's going to take years. The trees don't start growing initially when they're cut. Like the first thing they do is get their roots established, grow those roots, because that's what they need to support the tree. So, in my experience is, like with some towns, like 4 or 5 inch caliper deciduous trees, right? But sometimes, you put in a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper, and it's the ratio is better with the roots to the size of the tree, and they actually grow faster, and they're more viable and healthy. So, it's going to take a couple of years for these things to get established and grow. But once they do, especially some of these, the Leyland cypress and the green giant arbor, they grow pretty rapid. So.
One of the things that we've done for other applications where buffer has been a concern is we have required that the developer plant that perimeter buffer early on in the development process. Again, should the board actually act favorably on this application, that's something that I think would be applicable to this application, where that buffer gets planted as soon as possible. That back wall has to get built, because that's all part of the grading. So as soon as the site is graded, that back wall gets built, and then the landscaping would have to get planted. Not necessarily all the rest of the landscaping, because the site's being developed, but the buffer would get planted initially. And we've done that for other developments in town.
I agree with that.
I would recommend that also. To have these people wait years before they get a little privacy, I would strongly recommend that they do the buffer first. You put those trees up, give them some privacy. I wouldn't want to wait years.
As soon as practical, those plantings will go in.
Well, the way you said that you would do it rather sooner than later, or whatever time span, but
Once the rough grading's done and the wall is installed, that's when they can be planted.
I would recommend doing it as quickly as possible, just helping them out.
Yeah, we have no issue with that.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify this discussion, I think what the applicant's agreeing to do is that after the wall is constructed, as soon as, depending on the season, obviously, because we don't want them planting in the middle of the winter when they won't survive either, working with our township professionals, they'll make those planting as soon as they can within the season after construction of the wall. And as well, I hear testimony that the HOA to remain. Will you agree to put that in the HOA documents, specifically that the HOA has to maintain that buffer landscaping area?
Yeah, and you can review the HOA documents.
Yes, just want to make sure.
Remember,
on
it's
the record.
residential to residential.
Yep.
We're not buffering a gas station.
No,
You know, so
but the buffer we're
these are
talking about
neighbors.
testified to.
Okay. In between their buildings, there are not buffers, you know? So just keep perspective of what we're doing here. And we are permitted use. The Madison Crossing was approved as part of a use variance over several years. So I just want to keep a perspective. These are neighbors. This is residential to residential. If it was a warehouse, it was a gas station, it was a use variance, I understand that. This was planned for this. So just want to point that out.
Okay, Barbara,
I just wondered, maybe I missed it, the stuff that you're initially planting, what's going to be the height, like on day one?
It's varied in accordance with recommendations from your professional, but I think Scott's testimony was somewhere between 8 to 10 feet between evergreens and deciduous trees.
That's correct.
And these things, all right, because I know around, I live in Lakewood, and they planted pine trees there about 3 years ago. And I don't know if they have longevity though or not, but they grew really quick and form a very dense, you can't see through them.
But that's exactly what your professional asked us not to do, not to create a wall. We had initially designed it that way, but since we're buffering residential to residential, your landscape architect and he stated as such, the idea to create a more visually pleasing landscaped area rather than just a green wall.
And just to reiterate, they're going to be staggering those plants. So again, they're going to have more room to grow, which is what they really need. I mean, you need sunlight, and the more you can give it to them, the faster they're going to grow.
So I just want to chime in to Vice Chair Cannon's question. With the one thing that I just want to remind or reiterate is when the Crossroad redevelopment plan was written, the reason why this area was zoned for flex district was the idea was that either the developer for Madison Crossings or somebody would come and develop this site with a consistent, I'm sorry. Sorry. With consistent development or similar land use patterns. So having a wall or, creating that visual barrier or segregation would be against what was the vision of that plan. So I think that's why Tim and I had suggested that instead of having a barrier wall, why not have something that is more aesthetically pleasing? And we had assured that we'll ensure that the landscaping is such that it provides a screening. So that was the whole point of not wanting a wall.
okay, we're still on the left here. Anybody else have a comment? Okay, now you get your shot. Abe?
My comment, looking at the illustration, I'm concerned with water runoff. I mean, the new proposed structure is 15 feet lower than the adjacent grade. I understand you recently repositioned that retaining wall, but that adjacent property is running off onto your property.
Yeah, that is correct.
That's not a deep span that you have, so I'm sure that's been calculated or thought through, but I'd be concerned about potential flooding on that low floor.
Sure, we have a number of drainage inlets and a drainage system that's at the bottom of that wall to accommodate that. We did make sure we accommodated the drainage area that's coming from Madison Crossing onto our property. It's not unusual to have a drainage system at the bottom of a wall to make sure that the grade is sloped away from the homes, sloped away from the retaining wall. We have enough inlets there to capture all the water that's going to be coming to that area and wrap it and get it away from the buildings.
I thank you for that. I just would
Yeah,
expect the planning professionals to take a good look at that.
I can confirm that there's a drainage system in between the wall and the proposed building, and there is actually, although this illustration, because the purpose of this illustration was really to illustrate the sight lines, the actual finished grading in between the wall and the building, there's a swale that's created with several storm inlets that'll collect the water, and the calculations do provide for a runoff that's coming off from Madison Crossing onto the site. That's the applicant's obligation to make sure that they actually manage that water as well. And then the retaining wall has drainage that will actually get tied into that drainage system as well.
Thank you for that. The other question was the required setback on the rear yard. We're in compliance with the new proposed structure. It appears to be, I don't know if I'm looking at 37 feet. Is that correct? And what is the required setback?
Still need a variance. 50 feet is required, and they are at 37.5 feet.
Well, my last question is relative to decks or any structures that would be proposed on the new structure. I don't see any. All the illustrations show beings inside the building in lieu of the opposite side where we see decks. Are there proposed decks?
So you'll hear from the architect who will explain that facade. There are no exterior decks. There are balconies that are recessed inside into that facade.
That's it for me, Mr.
Okay. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you guys for, one, thank you for moving the wall up to get more buffer. I think everyone said their piece already on the buffer, so I'll stay away from that. I do want to talk about and ask questions on the cross-section that you're doing, right? So I haven't really been out to the site. I do remember being on the wetland portion a long while back when I first became a council person, but the question I have is, right now, where you're at I guess the ground floor level, is that the current level of the ground as we stand today, or is it being regraded lower? Is there dirt being brought in?
So that first floor elevation will be approximately 1 foot to 1.5 feet lower than the grade that's there today.
Okay, so it's dropping down.
It's dropping down a little bit,
further than
yes.
it already is. So right now,
Which is not
you-
atypical, because
Oh,
you have to scrape the soil and.
yeah, so you said it was 16 feet from the walkout basement? Is that what the?
Correct, yeah. Our first floor elevation, if you set that at 0 and run everything off of that, the Madison Crossing walkout basement is at elevation 16.5, roughly.
Okay. And this is, and the top of the, so I know when we look at the top of the buildings, there's a lot of attic, with lack of a better term, attic space. What's the elevation for the third floor where the silhouette is standing? It's 21 feet at the bottom, right?
21 feet to the bottom,
And then
yes.
it's 21, and it's 9-foot ceilings, roughly?
I'll defer to the architect, but roughly 9-foot ceilings.
Let's say 9 to 10-foot ceilings. so that
Correct,
goes to
roughly.
31 feet, so.
Right.
31 feet from the bottom would bring it up, so then it's theoretically the top of the third floor is roughly 15 feet above grade of the walkout basement?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. Okay, so that probably puts that just in line with what I would say is what the deck would be?
Yeah, and that's what this projection really shows. If you have someone here, this red line projection, this horizontal red line, if you project that onto the Madison Crossing property, it would, hit the deck.
Scott, can you speak into the mic and repeat
sorry.
what you said?
Yeah.
Because I want the residents to hear that. There was a lot of concerns about it, so I think you need to explain that better. And thank you, Eric, for the question.
Yeah, so if you were to look at the third floor elevation for the villas, and you have a person standing at the window in the back, their line of sight looking straight ahead is this horizontal red line. And if you were to project that into the Madison Crossing development, they'd be projected into the either one of the decks, honestly, the one that's from the closest deck to the property and the deck that's further away. But that's where they would, their line of sight would be.
So then if there was a and I'm not sure if how the second levels for Madison Crossings come out. So in theory, if you're on the second level of the Madison Crossings building, you would be really staring at the top peak of the building?
Correct, and when you say second level, I would,
Yeah, so the
the highest level
top
on their
person-
building.
the top
Right.
person on
So
the
here, yeah, if you were to project his line of sight or her line of sight, you would project that across, and you'd basically be looking at
The top.
the peak of the roof.
Okay. And the wall itself, right? So what is the distance from the retaining wall to the new building?
The retaining wall to the new building is 20 feet.
Okay. So 20 feet, so what do we have, about 15 feet of buffer for?
Correct, 15
this
feet.
property that would be planted?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the additional 2 feet in there, because we have, our building is 37 feet away, the additional 2 feet is the wall itself, primarily.
Okay. And I don't know if there's going to be testimony on this, because I know one of the concerns I would have is, on these levels, where are the HVAC systems going to be? Are they going to be in the back portion up here? And I don't, and if I'm jumping ahead, I'll keep
Our
it.
architect is next. and I
Okay,
think he
then
can
I
speak to
will,
that.
I'll hold, we could talk about
Sure,
that then. I don't want to jump ahead. Okay, well, that's all the questions I had for now.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we all good to let Scott take a seat? Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thank
If I
you.
could call Michael Testa up, the applicant's architect. We'll get him sworn and have his credentials placed on the record. Thank you, Scott.
Now, everybody remember that you'll be able to ask Scott questions at the end of the meeting and make comments at the end of the meeting. So the next witness will do his testimony now.
Mr. Testa, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you please, for the record, just state your name and spell it?
Sure. First name is Michael, last name Testa, T-E-S-T-A.
Thank you.
Do you share with the board your educational background and professional affiliation in licensing?
Yes, I'm a graduate at New Jersey Institute of Technology, Bachelor of Architecture in 1991, licensed architect in good standing in the state of New Jersey since 1996, owner and principal of firm Michael V. Testa Architect, Manalapan, New Jersey since 2002, and I've had the pleasure of presenting in front of this board a number of times.
You're accepted.
Thank you, sir.
Michael, if you could just take the board through your designs here, the buildings, and kind of the general overview. I think you heard a couple of questions about some decks and some HVAC equipment, so if you could incorporate that into your
Sure.
testimony.
I'd like to walk the board through the buildings. We're basically presenting 3 buildings here tonight. There's Building 1, which would be on the southernmost part of the project. That's the building that's abutting the Madison Crossing property line. Then off to the west, there's Building 2, and then at the northern part of the site is the clubhouse. Building 1 is basically a L-shaped building, we're going to call it. That building consists of 39 units. It is approximately 58,059 square feet. There is 19,477 square feet on the first floor, and each of the floors above are 19,291. This building is comprised of 39 units. There are 12 one-bedroom units, 21 two-bedroom units, and 6 three-bedroom units. Most of the units have balconies at the front of the building. The balconies protrude beyond the front face of the wall to give the building additional shade and shadow and character. At the rear,
Mr. Chairman, what
it's
he's
not
talking
the-
about is not depicted on the screen.
yeah, can we pull up PB1, please? It should be one PDF that has all 7 drawings in it.
I think it's, are we referring to the architectural plans that were submitted as part of the application? Okay, it would be it's actually on the website as well, the architectural plans.
I looked at them this afternoon on your website.
Yeah.
And I have a flash drive with the PDF files if you'd like to have them as well.
And while they're getting that, just, Mr. Clausers, just to clarify, this is the architectural plans that he's going to be referring to as those that's already been submitted as part of the packet, so we don't have to mark those separately as exhibits.
That's correct. They don't need exhibits.
Thank you.
I'm usually old school. I bring the boards with me. This is the first time in, I think, 20 years I haven't brought boards with me to a meeting. That's the full set. Just PB1, the first image. Okay. As I indicated, the building is like an L shape here, and it is located at the southernmost edge of the property, abutting the Madison Crossing property. This is where the section that Mr. Turner had illustrated to the board and the public. And as I indicated, the number of units. That's good, thank you. As I indicated, the front facade has balconies that protrude out beyond the face of the building, whereas the rear wall along the Madison Crossing have recessed balconies. So there's nothing protruding beyond the rear building wall line, as indicated in Mr. Turner's cross-section. The height of the ridge that Mr. Turner had referred to as well is 41 feet, 7 inches. I'll get into that when we get to the building elevations. The entrance into this building is right here at the center. It has a vestibule area for security purposes. There's also adjacent a separate door for deliveries of mail and packages. Off to the right of that is a trash room that contains a compactor and 2-yard containers that are on wheels. The staff maintenance person on garbage days will go into this room, roll these containers out to an area designated on the site plan, and then roll them back in after the garbage is collected. This room is centrally located to all the rooms above. There are trash chutes in those rooms. We'll go to the next floor, please. Be the next sheet. Right in here is that trash room. You can see this trash room is a fairly large space. It has 2 trash chutes to allow for garbage to be brought down. Larger items such as cardboard boxes would be typically stored in this room and taken down separately by the maintenance person. There's a centrally located elevator that makes ease of access to both wings of the building. There's a large open area, community area in the center of the building with access to it. All of the units are handicap accessible. The entire building is handicap accessible. The ADA compliant. The elevator is a stretcher compliant elevator, which for ease of emergency personnel to move patients or people in and out that are incapacitated. You have a 3-bedroom unit over here, a 3-bedroom unit over here, and it's all interspersed throughout the building, the mix of the units. We do have a total of 14 affordable units throughout the site. The 1-bedroom units are approximately 759 square feet. The 2-bedroom units range from around 1,230 square feet to 1,460 square feet. And the three-bedroom units are approximately 2,040 square feet. So each of the units have open kitchens, large living spaces, adequate size, more than adequate size bedrooms, very comfortable living areas throughout this building as well as the next. If we could just scroll to the next image, please. This image here is the front facade that'll be facing the parking lot. This building, as you can see, is 3 stories. We have basically articulated the building both horizontally and vertically. Can we just zoom into this a little bit for the community? Thank you. As you can see here, we have a mix of materials. We have a cultured stone base. We have horizontal siding going up 2/3 of the building. And at the upper third, we have vertical batten board siding, all high quality materials, low maintenance items. We have double hung windows as well as shutters. And we have these vertical elements where the balconies are located that basically break up the facade vertically across the building. These elements are carried around all 3 of the sides, as well as the 4th side facing the Madison Crossing property. If we could just scroll down to the back facade of the next page, please. This is the facade facing Madison Crossing. As you can see, very similar with the different breaks of materials, different color tones, all in the earth tone palette. We have the recessed balconies in here. And someone had asked a question about the air conditioning units. In these little areas here, these little closets per se on the balconies. And inside those closets are heating and air conditioning units, typically called magic packs. They grab their fresh air from here. They're not unsightly. It just has a louver or a grill on the face of the wall that's painted the same color as the face of the wall, and it blends in with the facade. All 4 facades, again, carrying the same colors and materials throughout. This was building 1 for everyone. If we could scroll to the next building, please. And here is building 2. As you can see, it's just a standard rectangular building opposed to the L shape. This is located on the western portion of the property. And this building here is approximately 54,434 square feet. There's 18,250 square feet on the ground floor, 18,092 square feet for the 2nd and 3rd floor. This building contains 31 units, where the other building contained 39. We have 2 one-bedroom units here, 20 two-bedroom units, and 9 three-bedroom units. This building, if we could just zoom in here, please. This building also has a centrally located entrance at the ground floor, adjacent to a mail room, package room for the occupants. We have a large lobby area for lounge space for the occupants to come down, use their computers. We have an centrally located elevator again to access both wings of the building. And what's different here is we also provide 32 storage units. So we have approximately 16 bins here, 16 bins here. Again, this building is fully sprinklered. It's fully handicap accessible. All the units have been designed to be handicap accessible, and as well as all the amenity spaces. If we can just scroll to the next image, please. And again, you can see this building is the same architecture. We like to call this a modern colonial appearance, where we have a lot of colonial elements incorporated using multiple different building materials to give it a more modern and contemporary look and feel, yet still being contextual with the rest of the Township of Old Bridge as far as their style of architecture. As I had indicated, the top of this roof, the highest point of this roof, is 41 feet 7 inches. And the unit sizes are all the same. It's 759 square feet for a one-bedroom, 1,230 to 1,460 square feet for two-bedroom, and 2,040 square feet for three-bedroom. If you can scroll to the next page, please. And the third building on this site is the clubhouse, which is located at the northernmost part of the property here. Can we just zoom into this plan, please? Can we just zoom into this area? Wherever you'd like to zoom in is fine. So this building is an amenity to the community. This building will be used primarily for the residents. It will not be rented out. This will be just used for the residents of the community. This building is a one-story building that is 4,834 square feet. It also, in this area, contains a one-bedroom unit. This one-bedroom unit is for the on-site maintenance person that's going to be living here at all times, so that way he's on site if there's ever needed for any purpose. Can we just scroll up a little bit so I can give a little more of the amenity? Thank you. The rear of the property you can see is a pool with some lounge area for the residents as well. So you walk into this building with a central entrance area. You have a leasing office and backspace. We have a community lounge area here. We have a community lounge area in the back with card tables, a coffee area. This is the residential unit as well. We have a gym space, yoga studio, and multiple bathrooms that could be used for both the interior occupants and the exterior occupants, and a small meeting room at the back corner. Can we just move over a little bit so I could just see the elevations? Great, thank you. So these are the two side elevations. I think it's down below. Yeah, if you could, there it is. This little guy right here. So can we zoom down into here? Yep. Just scroll down to the bottom of the page right in that area. Great, thank you. As you can see, the building is a one-story building with a little more decorative hip-style roof to give it a little more a differentiation between the other buildings, but still carrying the same architecture through with a rusticated base, vertical cultured stone elements here, accented entrance with columns and a portico with a pediment, horizontal siding, and asphalt shingle roof. This is a small canopy on the left side of the building. That's the entrance to the residence here for the maintenance person. And we have a small decorative cupola here, again, just to add character to the structure and to help differentiate it from the other buildings. The other three sides of the building, again, are common design elements is the main facade with horizontal stone, horizontal siding, asphalt roof, stone fireplace for the interior space, and again, a complete complement for the other two buildings. That would be the end of my testimony.
Thank you, Michael. I have no questions for Michael, but he's available to your professionals and the board members for any questions they may have.
Okay, let's open up for the professionals. Any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I'm sure you will be willing to work with us on the materials when we're going through the compliance review stage.
Absolutely, Vina, yes.
And from what I understand, the recessed balconies, you have looked around for other projects in Old Bridge, the recent projects, and that's where you got the idea from, I'm sure.
Yes, we've done many projects in the township. We've had the direction from the boards previously to kind of look around town, see what's being built, and complement those buildings.
So I want the board to hear this because we have been working with architects. Some of the buildings that were designed, especially the ones that were part of older GDPs, the ones that were approved like 20, 25 years ago, their architecture style used to be the typical garden style apartments, which were the planning of the 80s or the 70s. And we are working with architects or on any development, residential development that comes in to modernize them in terms of the architecture, the look, and the architectural features that are being used. So Mike has worked with us before on many other projects, and for his testimony, he is ready to work with us in future to finalize these elevations.
Okay, thank you. Rakesh, any?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
While we're on this side, Eric?
I have a couple questions. One, on the recessed balconies, about how wide are they?
They're approximately 5 feet deep and by about 8 to 10 feet long.
Okay. And the AC units, can you just, so these aren't the typical, like like some of the older developments, they have just huge units in the back.
Right.
Similar to the residential units. These aren't that?
No, what's outside typically is a condenser unit. That's usually for your air conditioning, and then inside, like you'd have in your regular house, is a typical split system, which would provide heat and air conditioning. What we've done to minimize the impact on the site is produce a different unit that's used a lot in apartment buildings that is self-contained, and it's located on the outside wall typically. It doesn't have to be on a balcony, but it's done on an outside wall, so it has constant fresh air, so it gives air change, and it runs much more efficiently that way.
So you don't have the typical noise that's coming out of the condenser units that are consistently running like in a
Correct.
residential house?
Yeah, and it's contained inside a closet more or less, except for the louver that's open
So
for
they're
fresh
they're
air.
probably typically fairly quiet then, right?
I would say
If it's not your
yes.
expertise, it's okay. I'm just trying to, obviously, you've already heard folks questioning and, with the buffers, outside of also looking at things, you also have to hear your neighbors as well.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that the folks understand what they're actually getting versus what you would have saw about 5 to 10 years ago with the large units in the back. You're not getting that anymore.
Yeah, this is a self-contained unit that will produce some noise, nowhere near what the condenser on the ground with the fan blowing and everything.
And the majority of that noise is probably pumping right into that residential unit more than pumping out.
The noise is contained. It's an insulated wall, so it's just like
Okay.
like a sound transmission separation between the exterior and interior.
And on the back wall, what's between the building and the retaining walls? Is it just landscaping, like grass?
Just
and stuff?
landscaping, yes.
Just grass and everything? Okay.
Vina?
So I just have a quick question. Can you talk about the trash collection that happens at the buildings and on the site?
Yeah, I had indicated, if you just go back to one of the first drawings, ma'am, thank you. There are trash rooms on each of the floors. The upper 2 floors have a room which contains 2 trash chutes and a larger area. So this is in building 1, this is the trash room here. You can see it's a fairly large space. There's 2 chutes that go down into these 2 bins. They're compressed and the bins roll out. So there's typically a couple of 2-yard trash containers on wheels. There's double doors here, usually it's 6 feet wide to 8 feet wide, that would open up, and the containers would roll out. They'd roll out into a spot on the site by the maintenance person, and those containers would be picked up once, twice, 3 times on an as-needed basis on when it needs to be removed. And those are loaded also from the first floor. There's a little room here with doors, so you'd open up the little door like an old bank deposit box, and you dump the garbage into that garbage container. That room's self-contained. It'll be cooled. There'll be a drain in there to minimize any kind of odor and discomfort for any of the occupants adjacent to that room.
Thank you.
Dan, any questions? Okay, anybody to my left? Ed? You're up.
Can you go back to the drawing that shows the back elevation of the building that's facing the existing residence?
That would be sheet 4. That's okay, I get it. There you go. Yes, it would be the one up top here.
The one up top. And there are, how many units are in that building alone?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units facing the rear property line, but there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 units that are up against that property line. Because remember, the building's like an L, so it angles away from the property line.
Yeah.
So there are 4 units that are parallel to the rear property
Do
line.
you have any idea, is it on the right or on the left side of that building?
It would be on the right side
On
here.
the right side. So as I'm looking at these,
Yeah, so this is, again, you have, it's like a V shape, an L shape, so it's kind of hard looking at it in perspective. But again, it's going to look like this if you're looking at it straight on,
Right.
where everything is straight at you. This is off on an angle.
right. Now, there's access from those back decks to that space, that 20-foot space between
No.
the retaining wall? There's no access?
No, there's no
From
access.
those balconies?
No, not from the balconies up above. We have a fenced-in area along the ground, so no.
But a person could easily step over that into the backyard on the lower level to gain access if they wanted to.
Well, it's a 42-inch high rail. I'm 58 years old. I might have a little hard time getting
Just-
over
yeah,
it.
I just have to, thinking out of the
Gotcha.
box here. And the air conditioning units, it's one unit, but we're talking about 6 units now, 6 air conditioning units that will be functioning all the time. So you increase the level of noise by 6 as opposed to just 1. So you have that noise that is cumulative if they all ring at the same time. And you're looking for a variance because it's 50 feet. Okay, and you're looking for a variance because it's now 50 feet to setback, but you're looking, because you're going to have, what, 30, was it 37 feet or what?
Mr. Turner had spoken to the purpose of that based upon site conditions. I'd rather have Mr. Turner respond to the location of the building relative to the property
Okay, well,
line.
there's an item here that's, has to be, the setback is an issue. Would you be willing to make that a 2-story building instead of a 3-story building?
Well, I think the
that
height
one
of the
building.
building, we showed that is not, basically the impact on the adjacent property. The height of the building is actually lower than the buildings on the adjacent property. So I don't,
I understand that, but, looking at from the resident's point of view, if you were in that property and you've had this beautiful woodland area behind you all these years, and all of a sudden this building appears, I'm concerned about that. Either that or do away with the,
I'm sorry, Mr.
do away
Chair.
with the, yes, either that or do away with the back deck areas completely, so that there's no possibility of noise from people having parties on that side. There's got to be a give and take here.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrera. I appreciate your comments.
Are you finished? Yes. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Anybody else? Thank you, Mr.
thank you
Testa.
very much.
Our next witness is Frank Miskovich, traffic expert.
Hi, would you please, as you raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
It's Frank Miskovich. It's spelled Miskovich.
Thank you.
Frank, if you could just share with the board, you're a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey. I think you've testified in front of this board a couple of times.
It's been a quad while before the planning board, but I've testified for the zoning board. I'm a licensed professional engineer at the state of New Jersey. I have a bachelor's of science and master's of science degree in civil engineering from Newark College of Engineering back in '69. I have 55 years' experience now in highway and traffic engineering. I served 20 years with Middlesex County, where in the late 70s and 1980s, I functioned as the county's traffic engineer. I then went on to private practice, where I was manager or vice president of transportation for 2 Central Jersey firms. And in 2013, I went on my own.
You're accepted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, if you could take the board through your analysis of both the on-site development and circulation and the traffic impacts.
First, if it pleases the board, we have a lot of residents here, maybe hearing the first time what happens with a traffic study. So let me just briefly explain what a traffic study does and what we do. We do a site inspection of the area. We set up doing traffic counts. We look at what the traffic might be generated by a particular development. We then distribute that onto the area roadway network. And then we then do an analysis to see what the operating conditions will be of a site driveway or an intersection, either before or after development. And then we look at the site plan to look at circulation, parking, everything else to make sure it complies with accepted engineering standards and also the township requirements. Having said that, we had submitted a traffic and parking assessment report to the town that's dated September 28, 2024. Subsequent to that, we received a review letter from your engineer of environmental resolutions on February 27, 2025. In there, they had some comments relating to traffic, and if you recall, on the 27th, we did not reach traffic testimony that evening. So that gave me the opportunity to go back and address some of those traffic comments, which was included additional traffic counts, and that was, we did prepare a response to those traffic comments, a written response, that's dated March 15, 2025. So let me first go through the database that we collected in the traffic counts. Originally in the 24 study, we counted traffic on Texas Road over the site frontage. We did that for a full week, and we summarized the data at 15-minute intervals. Now, typically, we would look at studying the weekday commuting hours, morning rush hour, evening rush hour for a particular development. But in this case, we decided to not only look at that, but look at traffic on a Saturday and traffic on a Sunday. So we expanded the typical, what I would call typical scope of a traffic study. So looking at those counts, we found, and those counts included all vehicles that were on that roadway, both eastbound and westbound on Texas Road at the site frontage. We found that the weekday peak hours occurred from 8 to 9 a.m. and 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Nothing unusual. Those are typical commuting hours. On Saturday, it happened midday from 11 a.m. to noon. Sunday from about 12 to 1. Now, that might have, day to day, might have been changed by 15 minutes thereabouts, but those were when the peak volumes were recorded during the count period. Other hours of the day, it might have been a lesser volume. What we found out, what was interesting, is that weekday PM and Saturday, the volumes were about equal on Texas Road. They're about the same. And then we had the weekday AM and Sunday, they were about the same. So it was ironic that we had that kind of consistency. The next step that we look at is projecting traffic out to some future year when this development could be built, constructed, and occupied. So we looked at the analysis year 2030. What we did was we took our 2022 traffic counts, projected out 8 more years to a year 2030. And to do that projection, we look at rates that have been compiled by the New Jersey Department of Transportation, where they have data and establish certain growth factors, certain percentage growth per year on certain various types of roadways. Main highways, principal arterials, local roads, urban arterials, et cetera. They classify Texas Road as an urban, as an urban minor arterial. And they classify the section, the recent data that's available, from Marlboro Road to Route 9 at a 2.75% growth rate per year. Ironically, just to the west of Marlboro Road and Marlboro Road south of Texas, the same classification they have is 1% per year, a little bit less. Historically, going back in the data, Texas Road, in our portion of it, has always been 1% per year. They've increased that percentage for this particular section. Having said that, we took the 2.75%, the higher growth rate, projected that out to 8 years to come up with a future traffic volume. And that was used then for our traffic analysis. Your traffic consultant in the review letter had a concern that the fact that we used counts that were based in 2022 and thought they were a little bit dated maybe affected by COVID. So since we had the time since the last meeting, we again did a traffic count on Texas Road at our site frontage. Again, counted for a 7-day period. We counted, summarized at 15-minute intervals, and we looked at those volumes and the peak hours in 2025. That was done in March of this year. What we found was that there was very little change in the traffic numbers between 22 and 25 during the weekday PM, AM, PM, and Saturday. But Sunday did show an increase in traffic volumes. In fact, the average growth for those weekdays and Saturday was about 1% a year, Sunday was about 5.1%. So there's a big increase. So what we then looked at to see if our analysis that we originally done was valid. We took the original counts that we projected 2022 to 2030 at the 2.75%. We then took the new counts, went from 25 to 2030, using the 2.75% again for the weekday and Saturday. Well, we did the Sunday at 5.1%. So we projected those out. And we compared those volumes in 2030. What we found was our original projections were still less than using the projections from the new counts. So the analysis that we performed with that data in the original report, I feel are valid. They still remain valid. What changed was Sunday, so we redid the capacity analysis for Sunday with the higher traffic volumes. Having done that, we looked at then the traffic generation for this development and what that might generate onto the area roadway networks. To do that, we looked at data that was again compiled by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. That data is published in their trip generation manual, and we're now up to the 11th edition. And we looked at senior adult housing. That nomenclature has been used in the past as age-restricted, different categories, but they've kind of grouped them all together now. But it's basically 55 and older type communities. We included the 70 units that's proposed for this. We added the superintendent unit. So we have 71 units that we project the traffic volumes on. And we looked at two particular periods. Traffic is usually generated by any kind of development during the peak commuting hours. That was well known. But there's also a made peak traffic during non-peak hours. For example, like a school may let out mid-afternoon, not necessarily at the evening peak hour. So there's two different types of periods. The peak hour of age restricted, based upon the data, tends to not be during that commuter hour. It's a little bit earlier during the day. As an example, during the morning, if we look at rush hour, it's 14, compared to the generator's hour is 20. The weekday, it's 18, and 21 during the peak hour of the generator. Saturday and Sunday are about the same because obviously those peak hours are concurrent. So what we did was, what we do is we took the higher number that was in here, we added it to the higher traffic volumes on the roadway, which gives us what we call a worst-case scenario, the highest volumes on the roadway. And then we do an analysis to determine what's the operating levels. Well, we look at levels of service, vehicle delay, et cetera. Having done that, we found that our driveway itself, the exiting movements, continues to operate at level service C. That was in the original report. And it's, on the Sunday, it's still a level service C, but there's an increase in delay. It's a little bit of 5-second delay for people trying to get out onto the roadway. The left turn into the site still operates at level service A. So those are well within reasonable levels of operating conditions for the site. The next step in looking at is we looked at the site itself. We looked at the parking requirements based on New Jersey residential site improvement standards. We look at the roadway configuration, does it comply with RSIS? And we found that it does. We have a 28-foot wide roadway entering the site that narrows down to 24 feet when we get down to the interior areas where we have perpendicular parking. RSIS, for the length of this entrance roadway, which is greater than 300 feet, they consider that to be, excuse me, a multifamily access cul-de-sac, meaning there's really one way in and out of the development. But on that type of development, they limit traffic to 1,000 vehicles per day. We're less than 230 per day. So we're well within the parameters that RSIS has set. If I even took it a step further and said this was a cul-de-sac, which they limit traffic to 250 vehicles per day, we're still less than that. So it does comply totally with roadway width, curbing, sidewalk, everything. It is full compliance. We then looked at the parking supply, and as Mr. Turner has indicated, we do meet the parking requirements for this particular development. But I took it a step further. I looked at how that parking is distributed on the site. We have parking at the clubhouse. We have some parking along Main Road A. But if you look at the parking around each building, the number of spaces that's provided around each is proportionate to the number of units for each unit. So you're not walking from one end of the entire development to the other. You're pretty close to your particular building. On the other side of that supply, there's demand. What is the peak demands you might expect at any particular time of day? Obviously, evenings are usually the peak demand when everybody's home. And the Institute of Transportation Engineers also provides data on parking rates based on number of units. The current one is the Parking Generation 6th edition. And for an age-restricted community, they're estimating about 48 occupied spaces at peak time, which may seem a little low. But then I looked at non-age restricted, which is a multifamily housing, which are predominantly 2 bedrooms or more in that type of development. And if I look at those rates compared to our number of units, we're talking about 82 to 90 vehicles at peak parking demands. So that's well within the parking that's being proposed for this site. So in my opinion, we do satisfy parking, and I don't think that's going to be a particular issue with having parking, try to park elsewhere on the site. We have more than enough. Off-site, I'm sorry. Texas Road, as we all know, is pretty heavily traveled, especially during commuting hours. And we'll forget Route 9 for a moment. But we've had discussion with the county. We had a virtual meeting with the county, April 16th of 2024, which included representatives from the township. And we presented several concepts for improving Texas Road, the widening of the roadway out of driveway, whether we needed a left turn lane, we needed to widen the roadway a little bit more, those type of discussions. The township also was looking to have a sidewalk constructed from our site to Route 9, at least to the CVS driveway or that vicinity. So all those items were discussed. What we did find out, number one, is the county definitely wants a widening, basically across our entire frontage, about 2,000 feet of roadway widening. The question is whether it's all on our side, some on the other side, or what the configuration will be. But it was acknowledged that any widening in that roadway because of environmental constraints could trigger an individual freshwater wetlands permit with any road widening, relocation of ditches, or utility poles. We're not sure to that extent. The applicant has agreed to work with both the town and the county to come up with a plan for improving the roadway. And actually, he's in the process now of having the entire length of Texas Road surveyed and the wetlands delineated across the entire length from Marlborough Road to Route 9. And that will allow us to now evaluate the impacts and to come up with a plan that can improve the widen Texas Road, maybe improve operations, but something that we can think is reasonable to fit in with that plan. So that's the problem we are working towards. We don't have a final resolution at this point. Obviously, I think the first step is to get an approval from the town. So in summary, I know I talked a lot, but I want to get everything on the record, especially for the public to hear too, is that the traffic generation, this is very little. You're talking about one movement, either in and out every 6 minutes on average or in peak times. So it's not a very high traffic generator. We use higher growth rates to project future traffic volumes, and the results of the analysis show they operate well within accepted engineering standards for operating efficiencies. Again, the roadway network internal and parking comply with RSIS and all industry standards, and that was basically the report.
Frank, I just have a couple of questions to sort of highlight. You talked about the levels of service with the condition that Texas Road is in now, and the levels of service for that intersection would operate within reasonable parameters from an engineering perspective. So any improvements to Texas Road would only enhance those operations?
Well, it will enhance it. There's a couple, and just to digress a little bit, from a capacity standpoint, the amount of traffic that would be used in the driveway intersection really doesn't require a left turn lane. However, there is always the concern that someone getting behind someone that's making the left turn and can't get around them is impeded. So one of the options was a left turn lane. Some options are widening, so there is room to bypass. Both of those have impacts on widening, obviously, and wetlands, so we're still evaluating. But definitely any improvement's going to help reduce traffic flow, reduce impacts of traffic flow on Texas Road caused by this development.
And as a result of the proposed development and the county's ultimate review and approval, and should the DEP cooperate, this development could result in approximately 2,000 feet of improvement to that Texas road as we leave up to the CVS.
That's correct.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Miskovich. He's available to your board and board professionals to answer any questions they may have.
Okay, our board professionals,
Yes, I think Frank's covered, I had raised several questions. I think Frank has pretty much covered all of them. Couple of things here, the county, of course, working with the county, that's still unresolved, and depending what they come back with, could, I guess, in the worst-case scenario, require an amended submission if it really had an impact. It's probably mostly widening along the road, but there'll be some changes to the plans to address whatever improvements, I guess, that they require.
Right, knowing the county, having worked for them and other projects too now, there's going to definitely be an improvement. At this point, I cannot categorically tell you just what that is.
Understood.
But they are looking for an entire improvement, at least on our side, which we feel we can accomplish, but we don't have all the survey data completed yet to give you that answer.
So once that's worked out with the county, I guess we would have the opportunity to look at it and give some input on it, I guess. I mean, it's their road, I understand, but
Well, I'll leave it to the town because I don't know at what point it stays with the board or goes down to the town engineer
Okay,
and the county to work out those issues.
understood.
But if that's something that the board wants to see those, that's not a problem.
Yeah, I would like to,
coming back.
yeah, certainly, once they come back with something, we would at least like to get that information so we see where they're going with that, and see if we, I don't know why we disagree, but I just, would like to see what the county is looking at. The only other thing that I had was about the clubhouse. I had mentioned about the, concern that this might be rented out or used for, and I think the response was that it's restricted to residents of the community. Probably based on that, I would suggest some kind of a deed restriction to prevent it from being rented out or from having events over a certain size where the parking would be over, there wouldn't be enough parking in this, and people would be parking on the road, they'd be parking on Texas Road, and they'd be parking all over the place. And I've seen that at other, even age-restricted developments near where I live, where they have an event there, and certainly would want to not have, this is a club, I assume this is going to be a clubhouse just basically for the use of the people that live there, maybe small gathering with their family or something like that, but certainly wouldn't want a wedding or something at this.
That's not the intention. I don't think the applicant would have any objection to that kind of a restriction.
Okay, that was, I think that's basically it.
Also, if you look at the floor plan that Mike showed, it doesn't really kind of lend itself to something that would be rented out. There's not a large hall area.
I think everything else has been answered. Thank you.
Rakesh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank, you talked about you're working with the county for the left turn lane and possibly a bypass area. Have there been discussions about sidewalk?
Yeah, discussions of sidewalk were included in there.
Okay.
Again, the issue is you widen the roadway, you have to relocate a ditch, and then you have the sidewalk. So there's where do you put what where? And obviously, adds a little bit more to the widening. But definitely, we're working with the town. Once we get all the survey and the wetlands completed, we'll be able to evaluate putting the sidewalk in the what, and then determine what those impacts are. But historically on Texas Road, any kind of widening is triggering some significant wetland permitting, let's say.
We've had significant experience on Texas Road.
So, but there will be something knowing the county to definitely.
We're keenly interested in having sidewalk along that stretch, given the fact that there's a shopping center right down at the end, and you have 70 senior units, so it would be good to get some folks the ability to walk down to that shopping center.
That's understood. The applicant's aware of that. And
It's not necessarily an objection to the request to install sidewalk out to the right to go up to CVS. It's whether it's feasible. We all are subject to the state. We could say we'll do it all we want, and if the DEP says you're not allowed, we can't do it.
So for the benefit of the board, I have been involved in all the meetings with the county, and in the first meetings itself, I had asked for that sidewalk because I think it's important when you have age-restricted housing and you have seniors living there, there has to be an ability for the seniors to be able to walk to the grocery store or a pharmacy. So the applicant had agreed to do whatever they can, but again, there are significant wetlands on the property, but they have agreed to work with us and county and then DEP to see what can be done. But I just want the board to know that the applicant has been working with the county. We had 2 or 3 meetings already in the, I think it's 2.
Every time we set one up at the county calls Vina and Nicole and puts them on the Zoom call. So they're always there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on our professionals? Okay. Anybody on this side, board members?
I have one question, Franken. My understanding of the calculations for a traffic study ought to include any other known developments in the area. Now, when I overheard your testimony, I didn't hear that factored in.
Well, back when I started this, didn't have any that would impact that. I don't know if that's changed, I would be honest with you on that one. However, I think using the higher growth rates and projecting out would accommodate any additional traffic.
Right. I mean, I presume the county is certainly factoring that, but I think that's part of what you should be doing as well. So I don't know if there's another bite at the apple, but that should be factored to your best ability.
Well, that's something the county will ask for at this point. We haven't made application to the county for the plan yet. We've had discussions on what improvements would be required, but there's no formal submission to the county yet. Once that happens, those things may occur. However, on that side of it, when we look at the levels of service, the level of service C, we have a range. When we go from a C to a D, we're kind of in the middle of that. So we can absorb additional traffic on the roadway and still be within that range, in my opinion. And then if it triggers higher, that means it's a left turn lane that has to go in type of thing. So
Just to answer what might be a question that's on someone's mind, well, why didn't you go to the county and work all of that out? There's a very clear statute in the municipal land use law that says we get to come to you first. There's a couple of cases, some really, really unusual DEP permits that had to be taken up first. But other than that, you have to have a starting point. And if I come to this board and this board says, go to the county first, and then I go to the county, and the county says, go to the DEP first, and then we just run around in a circle. So the legislature came up with the idea, go to the local board first, because you may make changes to our project that we can then take to the county, things of that nature.
Understood it, and I'm clear that our requirements are to factor other known developments. I'm not talking about county requirements. So just, all I'm asking is that you look into that part of it, and I'm sure the county is.
Certainly.
Okay. On my left, Ed?
Frank, if I call you Frank.
that's fine.
The first part of your presentation, I know it was English, but right over my head, okay? But the second part was clear enough. My concern is the traffic backup on Texas Road. You have, how far is it from the entrance and egress from your property to that, at that intersection?
I had a feeling that question would come up, okay?
Okay.
From our driveway to the stop line on Route 9 is 1,800 feet. We're about 1,400 feet to the CVS driveway. So we're quite a distance from there. Operationally, we're only adding maybe less than 10 cars peak out to that. I don't think that's adding significantly to any backups. You'd have to back up 70, 80 cars to get to our driveway. Operationally, the problem at that intersection is not necessarily, I'm going to categorize the traffic volume. It's the fact that the jug handle from Route 9 to make the left turn to the U-turn, that gets backed up because it's very close. And anybody in that jug handle that wants to go east across the high has to cross not only the left turn lane, but the other. And that's always congested. But we're quite a distance from that driveway where I don't think there's any issue operationally. Likewise, going to Marlborough Road, we're about another 1,600 feet. So we're kind of right in the middle. So operationally, our driveway activity is not affecting what goes on at that. There's no like spillover where we have that interaction where it's a problem.
And how many cars you, in the process, how many cars would you say would be in that development? Two per unit, would you say? Would be the average, you think? What are you basing your calculations on? How many cars?
Well, we look at rates, and it's actual studies, how much traffic exits out onto the roadway related to number of units. And those are done over, a period of time, the morning, during the evenings, too. So when we look at the peak hour, we're looking at a certain amount of traffic that may exit during that time, but that doesn't mean there isn't traffic exiting throughout the day. There's in and out, there's flow both ways. You'd have to look at vehicle ownership in the area for that type of community to determine actually how many cars might be there. But the studies look at parking demands, looking at probably about 90 cars at peak time for this unit, 70 units. So you're probably looking at just one per unit, or a little bit over per unit, which other studies I've done, other words, of some of the age restricted, you're in that range as far as vehicle ownership per unit. That's not to say that's going to be here, but that kind of gives you an idea. Some may have one, some may have two, but it's never. It's different with a multifamily. When you have children as a larger family, you're going to have more. But when you get into this type of community, it is a little bit less. But even if we're two per unit, we have enough parking to accommodate that.
Sure. Okay. Is there any school buses that would traverse along that area on Texas Road? Did you know?
I can't say for sure. I know if we counted, they were in the counts.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're not having any school traffic with our development.
No, I understand.
I'd be
But
surprised
I'm thinking about the backup of traffic on Texas Road because you.
As
school
I
bus
indicated,
stopping,
if there's any backup, it's not really getting to our site. We're quite a distance from any of that. So,
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just had a backup question for the architect. Is that all right, or?
Of course, yeah. So-
Right now, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you want to ask if anybody else has any more questions for Frank, or, we.
Let's finish with
Good.
Let's finish with the traffic first. Okay. Okay. Eric, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, when you were doing some of your calculations, did you testify that some of your calculations you did with the over 55 and then without, and you still met,
No.
we still met the criteria either way?
yeah, I was looking at parking, because not on the demand side. How many cars might be parked at the site at peak times? The data that's provided for age restricted would show about 48 to 50 cars parked at peak times. That's slightly less than one per unit. However, what I looked at as a comparison, if I took a multifamily type development, non-age restricted, I'd be 90 or less peak time. So just to show that our 140 spaces are more than adequate for this development. I was just probably confused, but I would just kind of give you an order of magnitude what the range might be.
Okay, and I had one clarifying question. When you were talking about the cul-de-sac, what was that? It was like a cul-de-sac, a residential cul-de-sac versus?
RSIS has criteria for developments that have a single point of entry inbound and outbound, right? You're typical where you have a single road that comes in with the bulb as a cul-de-sac, right? That's not what we have. But if it was a typical cul-de-sac as you envision, they limit traffic on that to 250 vehicles per day. We're less than that. when you have a multifamily development like this, a single point inbound and outbound, and it comes into the site, if it's greater than 300 feet, they consider that a multifamily access road. Okay. All right, because at the end, we do have the parking areas to turn around. With that, with the single point of entry, they limit it to 1,000 cars a day. So we're still well under that. It's just the classifications that they use for types of residential development that dictates the width of the roadway, whether it needs curbing, it needs sidewalk.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I have one question. If the county rejected all your proposals, okay, within the right-of-way, would you still be able to use the current access to continue with this development? I know there's an access now, and I believe there's a gate there.
Let me answer it this way. When we look at capacity, we look at operational efficiencies, we look at how much that left-turning traffic, let's say, will be delayed and what the queues might be. It shows very little delay for that entering traffic into our site. Very little delay. And part of that is because we have the traffic signal at Marlborough Road, which is another 1,500 feet away. It's quite a distance. What happens is someone that's behind him that wants to go straight may have to wait till he makes that turn.
I understand that.
So is it needed from a capacity standpoint? No. But operationally, if we want to keep traffic moving on Texas Road, we'd have to do some type of widening.
Okay.
And we did look at some options for that.
But if that didn't happen, my question is, do you currently have enough access? Because there was a house there some time back. Do you have enough width access to put the ingress and egress?
Yes, our driveway can be accommodated, and we have uplands area at our entrance on our side that we can do some type of widening for that. If that's your question,
Yeah, that's my question. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we're done.
Yeah, I believe one of the board members had a follow-up question to Mike. I want to make sure we get that in.
Yeah, I just had a question. I just want to follow up. The buffer zone should be at 50 feet, correct, between both properties? And we're going for a variance to keep it at 39? Is that correct?
It's 37.
It's 37 at this
Yeah,
point?
our planner is coming up next to talk about the variances.
No,
But yes,
I'm
it's
just saying it's
37.
37 at this
We're
point.
50 in a particular area, not the entire development.
So let me ask you a question. What happens if you keep the buffer zone at 50 the way that it's supposed to be and you don't go for variance? What happens to the units that you currently have between the end of your building to the retaining wall? What do you have left over there?
Well, Mr. Turner had indicated the impact based on the constraints of the wetlands around the property, pretty much eliminate one whole half of that building. So it's going to be impossible.
No, I'm just saying, you said you have 4 units that are butting up against them. So if you just take away and you keep the 50 feet variance, how much are you taking away from your side?
The depth of the building with the corridor, this is 75 feet, 35. So you're removing, if you remove half that building, you're removing approximately 25 to 30 feet of the building along that edge.
Okay. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, the electric. They are?
I understand that.
Yeah. It's the electric. A lot of them? Oh.
Of an electric car, Lincoln does, Ford has the money.
Some of them have like a combination.
I know, where's the, how's that going, Gary?
Okay, we're back in session.
Where's the, we're gonna need our applicant. It's time to get going. And, where's Vina? Where's the buck? Come on. We definitely need Vina, though. It's the planning
Yeah.
testimony. Yeah, we definitely need her for this.
Say, I was here.
All right, Mr. Chairman, before we start, just as just a side note, and this goes for everybody on the board as well as in the audience. I appreciate everyone whispering to try to keep it, quiet comment, but the transcriber needs to hear, and sometimes it gets a little distracting. So anything that might be substantial, if you could take it to the back of the room or outside. Otherwise, it's becoming a little difficult for that. So I just ask for your help with that issue.
Okay, it's going to be another 2 minutes, but Ms. Porcelli, can we have a roll call for the members that are at the,
I'm going to call Eric's not here.
There he is.
Get back.
they would have been missed.
I think we've got everybody.
Yeah, we can. Okay. Introduce and
Oh, we
swear
don't
in.
have Vina.
Okay.
She is not.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Ms. Cannon? Mr. Renna?
Here.
Mr. Petty?
Here.
Mr. Brennan?
Yeah.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Chairman Lauer?
Here. Okay.
Okay, we're back on the record. Our next and final witness is Allison Coffin. She's a professional planner, but I see that the board's planner is not yet in the room. So
Yes, for a couple of minutes.
yeah, so I can't have Allison testifying without Vina here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed, what was that discussion? Oh, yes. All right, but in the meantime, Mr. Collier, I could swear in the witness. Maybe we can go through her qualifications, get that on the record, and then we'll just wait for Vina to start. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that your testimony this evening is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you state and spell your name for the record?
Allison Coffin, it's Coffin.
Share with the board your educational background a little bit and your license.
I have a bachelor's degree from Boston College. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm also certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've had my license and certification for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years this June. I work for James W. Higgins Associates. We're located out of Ocean Township. In the 20 years that I've been a licensed planner, I've been accepted as an expert witness in front of boards in more than 100 communities throughout the state. I primarily stick to Monmouth, Ocean, and Middlesex counties, and I've appeared here in Old Bridge quite frequently, though I am more typically found in front of your zoning board.
Okay. You're accepted.
Thank you.
20 years, where our careers match.
Yes.
I've been with Ken and Jonathan. This September will be 20 years, and I remember Allison starting. So Allison, if you could, just share with the board what you did to prepare this analysis and then take us through the analysis. I would just remind the board that this is a redevelopment plan that we're operating under, not a typical zoning ordinance, so Allison will be speaking in those terms.
Sure. To prepare for tonight, I met with the applicant. I reviewed the application materials, met with the other members of the applicant's team. I reviewed your board's professionals' reports. I visited the site, and I've read the redevelopment plan and looked at your zoning ordinance. The subject site that we're looking at is a 39.65 acre irregularly shaped lot with frontage on Texas Road. The property is undeveloped and heavily encumbered with wetlands, leaving only 5.4 acres in the middle of the lot available for the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to develop the site with an age-restricted multifamily apartment community in 2 buildings with 70 total apartments, of which 14 are affordable, and a clubhouse which contains a superintendent unit. Site amenities include that clubhouse, a pool and pickleball courts, as well as parking, landscaping, and lighting. The property is located in the Crossroads Redevelopment Area Flex District. The proposed age-restricted apartments are permitted and are governed by the PRCC, which is the Planned Residential Retirement Community District's requirements. The applicant is requesting what are called design exceptions for some of these requirements. The design exceptions are different from bulk variances, and the criteria for granting these is different than what you would typically hear for variance or waiver relief, and it's laid out within the redevelopment plan itself. And the redevelopment plan says that the planning board can grant design exceptions from the Crossroads redevelopment plan when they, quote, will not substantially impair the intent of the redevelopment plan and will not present substantial detriment to the public health, safety, and welfare. So the design exceptions that the applicant is requesting are, first, the minimum tract boundary setback / landscape buffer where 50 feet is required and 37 feet is proposed. This design exception is driven in large part by the environmental constraints of the land and a challenging sewer service area boundary, which creates severe limitations on where development can be located within this parcel, resulting in a portion of one building extending into that 50-foot tract boundary. The applicant is proposing extensive landscape buffering in this area to mitigate the intrusion, and the setback proposed is greater than the setbacks existing to the properties to the south, which indicates that the setback is consistent with the character of the area. Furthermore, given the grade change, I think that mitigates part of the deficiency in the setback in that the building appears lower than it would be if it were at grade and still the same height. The next design exception that the applicant is requesting is minimum active recreation area. Now, the plan requires 3% of the tract, which in this case would be 51,819 square feet. The applicant's proposing 9,315 square feet. The applicant has scaled the active recreation area to be appropriate to the usable area of the lot, that 5.4 acres, as opposed to the full tract size. When this redevelopment plan was drafted 20 years ago, it's not likely that the extent of the wetlands on the site was fully known. And the strict application of this requirement would result in 22% of the developed area being set aside for active recreation, which would severely impede the ability of the site to accommodate the permitted use and the residential density that allows for this project to work. If we apply 3% to the developed area, the active recreation component would be 7,057 square feet. So the applicant exceeds this, and that indicates to me that the intent of the requirement is being achieved. The next design exception is the minimum building setback from private streets, from private street curb. 20 feet is required, and at the clubhouse, we're at 10.3 feet. The severe environmental constraints on this site, again, require that the development area be used efficiently, and that results in this building being located closer than 20 feet to the internal street. The site plan proposes landscaping in this area to soften the appearance of the building so it does not feel like it's imposing on the streetscape. And there are a few more design exceptions proposed. Within the Crossroads redevelopment plan, it has some fairly hyper-specific requirements that appear to have been aimed at enabling a very specific housing type that was commonly built when this redevelopment plan was written 20 years ago, those quadruplex-style units that Vina mentioned in the last hearing. This style of housing unit is not consistent with current market trends, and therefore the applicant also requests design exceptions from these hyper-specific standards, and those include minimum dwelling unit floor size, maximum dwelling units per landscape parking court, maximum dwelling units per story, minimum balconies per unit, minimum balcony/patio width, minimum balcony/patio area, and minimum unit storage space. When the board is considering these design exceptions, the redevelopment plan provides us very specific guidance as to how to assess them. And it says, to gain approval of such modifications or waiver of development requirement or design standard, the applicant shall demonstrate the resulting change will, 1, generally satisfy the redevelopment plan's goals and objectives. I've reviewed the redevelopment plan's goals and objectives, and I think that the proposed development, even with the requested design exceptions, satisfies the intent of the plan. More specifically, the plan has goals to advance, the site plan advances the goals in the redevelopment plan of having an appropriate development at a key location in Old Bridge Township, enabling a carefully planned use of environmentally sensitive lands in a way that enhances the value of forested wetlands to the land uses developed in upland areas. The plan respects and protects extensive wetlands on the site by making efficient use of the upland area enabled by the requested design exceptions, providing for alternative housing types for senior residents in a planned retirement community setting, and enhancing the beauty of natural forested wetlands. The proposed plan limits impacts to the existing wetlands, leaving much of the site frontage unchanged and allowing Texas Road to maintain the existing enjoyment of the wetland's natural beauty. Secondly, the site plan has to be designed in accordance with the township's normally acceptable engineering, planning, and/or architectural practices, and the proposed plan achieves this even with the design exceptions. Third, it's not have an adverse impact on the physical, visual, or spatial characteristics of the overall development plan for the parcel or tract to be developed. The proposed design exceptions here do not have an adverse impact on the overall development plan's physical, visual, or spatial characteristics, and they allow for an efficient and attractive use of the uplands portion of the site. Fourth is to generally enhance the overall development plan for the tract, and that's the same. And fifth is to generally enhance the streetscape. The proposed design exceptions do not harm the streetscape along Texas Road. Internally, the proposed overall plan will have a desirable visual character. Sixth is not reduce the useful life or increased cost of maintenance of the improvement to be modified or otherwise have an adverse impact on the long-term function of the development. The design exceptions the applicant's asking for allow for a project with a useful life and maintenance costs that are improved by the efficient and effective overall design. And seventh is to not materially detract from the real property value of the development or adjacent nearby properties. It's my opinion that the design exceptions allow for a high-value project. They do not detract from the value of the development itself. And given the grade change and the extensive landscaping along the southern border, I would not anticipate a negative impact on the adjacent property from the requested setback design exception, and the remaining design exceptions will have no impact on adjacent properties as they have no off-site impact. There are two bulk variances that are also being requested from the township ordinances in addition to those design exceptions. And these are the minimum distance from building face to parking area and the maximum building facade length. This variance relief, this is the typical bulk or C variances that the board hears. There are two tests within the municipal land use law for this type of variance. The first is the C1 standard, that's the hardship variance, and that's appropriate when a lot's unique shape, topographic conditions, or pre-existing legal structures create hardship. And the second standard is the C2 standard, which is justified when the purposes of the municipal land use law are advanced by the requested variance and the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. It's my opinion that the requested variances can be granted under that C2 standard. Variances advance the purpose of the municipal land use law. Purpose A, promoting public health, safety, and general welfare. Purpose C, by providing adequate light, air, and open space. Purpose E, by promoting the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that would contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions and preservation of the environment. Purpose G, by providing sufficient space in an appropriate location for residential use. Purpose I, by promoting a more desirable visual environment through creative development techniques, and good civic design and arrangement. Purpose J, by promoting the conservation of open space and valuable natural resources, and by preventing urban sprawl and degradation of the environment through improper use of land. And purpose M, by encouraging a more efficient use of land. The benefits of these variances include advancing those multiple purposes of the municipal land use law and enhancing the development of this process consistent with the intent and goals of the Crossroads redevelopment plan. It's my opinion that there is no detriment to the variances proposed. The proposed building to curb setback could be considered de minimis in this case, and the proposed facade length is required due to the extensive constraints of the site, limiting the size and shape of usable areas. These buildings are deep within the property and not easily visible off-site, and therefore any impact to that variance would be limited to the residents and visitors on-site and has no impact off-site. And lastly, the variances that are requested do not impair the intent and purpose of your master plan and zoning ordinance. In fact, they allow for this property to be used consistent with the redevelopment plan. And for all of those reasons, it's my opinion that reasons do exist for the granting of the requested design exceptions and the variances, and that they can be granted without detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The granting of the variances would result in the improvement of the site in a manner which is consistent with your master plan and development ordinance, but most importantly, the Crossroads redevelopment plan.
Allison, I just want to clarify a couple of points. The 50-foot setback that we've been discussing and the 13-foot deviation is within the design standards under the redevelopment plan.
That's correct.
So that's analyzed as a design exception under the standards that you testified to sort of halfway through your testimony.
Correct.
And that's not part of something that's analyzed under the C1 or the C2 criteria that this board is commonly familiar with.
That's correct.
And is there, in addition to the 50-foot setback, from which we are about the length of this table violating, there is a buffer design standard as well?
Yes.
And does the applicant meet that buffer design standard?
We're only requesting the design exception from the boundary track.
From the setback? The buffer that's in place, that's designed, we meet that?
Yes.
Okay. I have no other, I just wanted that clarified, the two different standards. And if I could, Allison is available for the board and your professionals to answer any questions.
Vina?
Allison, a question for you. Since for all the variances or design waivers that are requested, do you really think that there's something that really stands out which would have negative impacts? Or these variances or waivers are a result of a plan that was written to a specific type of age-restricted housing? Because age-restricted housing could be single-family, two-family, like detached, attached, multifamily. So would you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I do think that the Crossroads redevelopment plan was so very specific, it seemed to have a very particular site plan in mind that was not subsequently built.
Have you really looked at Madison Crossing, the development? Have you looked at the zoning, the densities?
No, I have not.
Okay. I'll hold that thought for a minute, but I don't have any further questions for the planner.
Anybody else on that side?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
I don't either.
Okay. Board members, am I right? Eric?
So I don't know, I think this is more of a question for Vina. So for folks listening, we're now entering the round 4 of affordable housing. And as part of the township, we have to go through a plan for what our fair share of affordable housing would be. I'm talking into the mic. Can you hear? Is it better now? Okay. So we're entering into our 4th round of the affordable housing requirements that the state sets for us. And Vina, can you just clarify how this property would be affected by that?
Loaded.
Well, that's my job.
So Joe and I have been working for the last almost 2 months now on affordable housing. And the way it works is, and what has happened, what the numbers, I'll leave that aside. But assuming that nothing gets built on this property now, assume that the board denies the application, the developer goes away. It becomes vacant land. Per the state, as a planner or as the township, we have to create a housing plan that addresses or creates affordable housing. So I would be most likely, and Joe, please chime in whenever I'm incorrect, but most likely I would have to create an inventory of vacant land within the township. And that would include private as well as publicly owned parcels. This is a township-owned parcel. It comes under Class 15C. It would be included for affordable housing. And what happens is when you conduct a vacant land analysis, you look at the zoning on the adjacent parcel, you look at densities, you look at the land, you analyze it to come up with a realistic development potential. If this land is vacant, when it goes to a fair housing center or DCA and they are evaluating it, to them, this is 39 acres of land. And Madison Crossing, because usually the way planning works is they want to develop or have consistent land use patterns. So they will look at the surrounding area for densities, they will look at the surrounding area for types, and then they would tell us how much or what we need to build. So if Madison Crossing is roughly 43 acres, I was just looking up on the maps. Thank you, Rakesh, for helping. But Madison Crossings is roughly 43 acres. That has 228 homes. So if you translate that, that is a density of 5 units per acre. Now, typically, with my past experience with affordable housing, the assigned density is 8 units per acre. It can go to 16 units per acre, depending on the land. However, I am being conservative. I assume that at 5.3 units per acre, where Madison Crossing is developed, if this vacant piece of land was to be assigned a number, it could even come up to 200 units on that site. And I bring that up because it's a hypothetical number. But what happens is if the land is constrained, then they opt for cluster zoning, or where you preserve the open space that is constrained and you go higher. So all the concern about the 3-story building, there is a potential that we don't do anything, the state comes in, and then you're forced to go higher and you have taller buildings. The other instance is when they say, okay, now this site, because it's municipally owned, could be a site for 100% affordable units. And because it's township owned, now you have to develop the site with all 100%. And again, remember, the underlying zone is something that allows residential as well as non-residential. What is being proposed is age-restricted housing. I understand, because when I was using the restrooms, I was hearing people talk that, oh, these are apartments. It's not the type of housing we live, but it's age-restricted. And from what I understand, these are condos, right? They're not a
We always
rental.
use the word townhouse. I was going to speak to that.
Right. So it's a different style, but they are age restricted. There are no school kids. It is the similar type of development that is coming. The building type might be different. So, and that's why I said it's a loaded question. There are a lot of possibilities. The zone allows for a warehouse. The zone allows for a data center. The zone allows for extended stay. The zone allows for non-residential development such as restaurants, offices. So, among all the permitted uses, and this plan was written years ago. This plan was written when Madison Crossing was being developed. So, out of what the zone allows and the permitted uses, what would then be the best choice for that area, right? So, there are multiple things that the board needs to think about when, you're reviewing this application. I think this is one of the tougher applications the board has to review and weigh in on, because there are multiple factors and we are in the 4th round. The township is compelled by the state to have a housing plan in place by June 30th, 2025. So in the next few months, Joe and I will be busy looking at all the vacant properties that are there. Eric, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, to the fact that based off of the fourth round and just the affordable housing mandates that happen, should this go into the vacant land, the state can force us to build 200 some odd units plus on this property, and it would actually take the power that we have as a board to ask for certain things, for buffers, for design and things like that away from us, and kind of really the state mandates what we have to put there, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So just want to make sure that folks understand with the affordable housing mandate that comes out, and unfortunately we're sitting at the starting line of the next round, right? If I'm not mistaken, the state had came back to us with something along the lines of close to 700 affordable units. When developers come in, those 700 units are at best 15 to 20% of what they build. So calculate that 700 number as just 20% of what would have to be built throughout the town. That's how you extrapolate how many units are built. So some of these, the questions that we're being asked, what we're requiring of the applicant and what they're gracious enough to do, should it go into the affordable housing mandates, these opportunities start to go away. And I think Mr. Klauser, you would agree with that as well, how some of this works is, as Venus testified, we can have these conversations with developers, with their attorneys, their professionals, and get certain things out of it. But should we go into a mandate, we no longer have that ability to have, lack of a better term, the negotiations with developers.
Just in my, if you were asking me, just in my experience with it, as we sit here, and the board sits here, your concerns are your neighborhood, your neighbors, Old Bridge Township. Once you get out of here and you get in front of a judge in state court, their primary concern is the constitutional mandate for affordable housing, not Old Bridge. Not to say that they're mean people, but when you get to the judge, that's why the case law that Joe talks about, judges defer to boards because they know the character of their area. But when it comes to affordable housing, that judge has got a job, and that's to get those houses built.
There's one more question, and not related to affordable housing, but it's a question for Allison, because as a planner, and typically when I work as a consultant, I work with the site engineers to see how there could be a minimum impact to the surrounding neighborhood, right? In this case, do you agree that the environmental constraints that are on this site actually impose some sort of hardship? I know we're not talking about a use variance, but because of the way the developable portion is laid out on the site, it's narrower at the entrance and it widens at the back. So the only place to put a building is towards the back, because otherwise we would have preferred, in many instances, the ordinances which I have written in the past 7 years have a minimum and a maximum front yard setback because you want buildings closer to the street right of way. But in this case, because of the constraint, the designer is kind of compelled to push the building to the back. And in that instance, immaterial of whether you're building an age-restricted housing or you're putting a warehouse, that would be the place to put a building. And I'm just talking in terms of site design. And would you agree to that?
Yes, I absolutely agree. If we were talking hardship, it would absolutely be present here. The site design is dictated in large part by the wetlands and the wetlands buffers, the sewer area.
Thank you.
Then, on the subject of affordable housing, since we have Vina and Allison here and their attention, I'll ask Allison, but Vina, I would invite you to comment. why not just get rid of more units? What happens when we get rid of more units? Is the affordable housing availability from this site in any way related to the market rate units?
Oh, yes, it's a percentage of the market rate units.
So as we lose market rate units, we lose affordable units.
Correct.
Vina, am I saying anything that's incorrect?
No, you're correct.
Mr. Chairman, I just kind of, I think this is an important discussion, but we really got to focus on the application before us, just given the hour, and we know, still have the public here that needs to be spoken about, wants to address and ask questions and make comments. So I would suggest that, kind of focus a little bit back into the actual application.
Okay, Eric, thank you for the question. Vina, thank you for the answer. Anybody on our left? Ms. Farrer?
Yes.
Allison, getting back to, you said something about the active recreation area?
Yes.
It's 3%, and you calculated that on the 5.4 acres?
Yes.
Right. I just wanted to, there seems to be an inconsistency here. We're now looking at the 5.4 acres for calculations, but when we look at the occupancy density of it, you were looking at the 39.6 acres.
I was providing
So
that, I mean, we do need
why
the
the
design exception.
inconsistency?
We absolutely need the design exception. But if you strictly apply that requirement, it takes 22% of the usable area away. So I was offering the board some perspective at how the open space and recreation area is scaled to the portion of the site that's being developed. But yes, the density is calculated by the entire parcel as it's defined in the municipal land use law.
That just doesn't seem right to me, but I guess if that's the way it's calculated,
Yes.
that's above my pay grade, I guess.
Okay, is that it? Okay, finished, everybody? Dan, do you have anything? No?
I do. I don't know where to direct my question. I'll start with you. In terms of the community impact statement, I know your testimony globally covered it, but there may be parts of what was documented in that statement that could address some of the community's concerns, obviously seeing a large majority of them are here. Is there something that you could speak to that could address some of the items that are a detriment that were outlined in the community impact statement?
I don't think the community impact statement addressed setbacks, which is what no. It deals more with public services, municipal services. Do you need additional library space, additional schooling, and the financial impact of the property? But it doesn't directly address the setback issue.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're gonna, are you finished with your testimony? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna open it up to the public.
I just with the hopes of maybe cutting off, an issue that comes up, and with Mr. Sardillo's permission, the question I know is going to come up, are these apartment buildings, are these rentals, are these sales? It is not a proper discussion in front of this board, the ownership of the property. These are meant to be for sale units, but think about it. I could sell it to someone, and they could decide to rent it. These are constitutional questions. These are economic and socioeconomic questions that are not for this board to hear. It's not within your jurisdiction whether someone's going to rent it or own it. Just trying to cut that off. I know it's going to come up anyway, but just trying to get that out there.
Yeah, yes, and I agree. If this was, a rental project, that's something different than whether the individual units are going to be owned or rented. And in that situation, I absolutely agree that with Mr. Clauser, that's not something that's before this board. These are intended to be rented, for sale units, but if an owner decides to rent it or not rent it, that's not within the purview of this board.
So, Mr. Lauer, I'm going to ask Scott to join me, because probably, I would think most of the questions might come to him, but all of the professionals will be available if there's an appropriate answer to give.
Okay, if anybody would like to make a comment or ask a question, raise your hand.
Yes, and for the record-keeping purposes, when you come up, can you please identify your name, address, and spell your name for the court reporter? It will just be helpful so that we have it, and it's accurate in the record, so you're not referred to someone who you're not.
No, you.
No, we have to, you have to use the
speak.
mic because we're on TV. So it actually has to be picked up. And you don't necessarily have to give the address. That's just something that historically we've always done, which is if you could say your name and your.
My name is Vadim Lukhavitsky, and I live 8 Hernandez Court. Last name Luhovitsky. And I live at 8 Hernandez Court.
And if you're going to present an exhibit, if you can just identify it, if it's a picture, tell us if you took it, what it is of.
Okay. Would you be able to bring the first picture from the developer you showed to us with the trees and everything, please?
It would have been last month, Maureen. No, the overall plan, the site plan. Or do you want the cross-section?
Yes, the
The
first
cross-section, I'm sorry.
May I use your pointer, please?
Thank you.
not
There's
mine.
pointer? Okay.
Not mine, you can use it. Yeah.
Is it pointer? Would you help me, please? Thank you. Works. Thank you. Okay, I have prepared a presentation based on the proposed development outline in the Vision Allbridge Major Cell Plan and would like to highlight several key points for your consideration. Upon of reviewing the drawings, which I had, I have noted that the actual distance from the decks to the boundary line is only 13 feet, not 25 feet as proposed. The new building will be just 15 feet away from our houses, not 16 feet, as indicated in your plan. I like your picture, but this picture...
Was survey work done? Is this man a surveyor, a professional engineer?
He has not been asked to be qualified as a professional. He's speaking as a member of the public, and it's a lay opinion that he's providing as to
So
testimony.
how were the measurements taken? Was there survey markers utilized?
I master degree in civil engineer with 20 years experience in my former country, and here I'm 25 years in real estate business.
So are you a licensed engineer in New Jersey?
I'm not, but I'm living this development and would like to bring all points I have.
You can, but I have to protect the applicant that you're giving out measurements, and I don't know how you came to those numbers.
I believe the board's supposed to tell us what should I do next.
You can provide lay testimony because you're not qualified as an expert. If you are going to give specific measurements, you have to be able to justify them.
I
so
used-
if you say if it's 15 feet, you can say, I went out there with
Okay.
the tape measure, it's 15 feet.
As I
If you're
mentioned-
estimating, you have to
As
identify
I
that.
mentioned here, I used the drawing which was available in the planning office for me, and I saw those drawings and took all sizes from those drawings. I never saw this plan before. It
Yeah,
was
this
not
has just
present.
been identified
Just
today.
exactly. It's
No one's seen that
just-
except for just today.
This is what I just said.
Did you make a statement earlier that the new building would be 15 feet from your building?
50, 50.
50 feet?
50 by your drawing.
Okay. I thought it was 15, that's why I asked.
50.
Okay.
Not 60. How shows on your drawing. Okay. The proposed building will also have common area elements AC units, which is usually located on the back of the building. And these units gives much more noise than units inside the balconies. We have on our property, we also have buildings, the three-floor buildings. And these pictures will show you how many units we have on the side of the building, which covers hallway, corridors, and common area elements of those buildings. And it's gonna face...
Let me just slow you down for a second. You're presenting the board with photographs. We're going to mark those as Exhibit 01. And can you please identify what it is depicted into those photographs? Well, first off, did you take those photographs?
Yes.
When did you take those photographs?
In our development, from the building similar to this, three-floor buildings with the AC units on the side for the common area elements inside the building.
So I'm protecting your I'm trying to get your testimony out, so please, I'm not trying to interrupt.
No,
you.
I understand.
So those photographs are buildings within your development, the adjacent
Correct.
development, and you took those photographs, and were they taken recently? Were they taken within the last month, was a year?
It was taken at time of the first meeting a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. Thank you. Continue.
All right. And these units, really big units, and it's like your home units, probably not like balcony units, and it's gonna impact us definitely. The developer plans to plant these trees, but I urge you to consider the following details. The drawing which I saw shows us 27 red cedar trees, which planting height 6-7 feet, which will mature to high of 25 feet, growing only 1-2 feet per year. Then, just 5 white oak trees, which is planting high is 12 to 14 feet, which will mature to high 60 feet, growing only 1 foot per year. And the third one is 4 red maple tree, which is planting high is 12-14 feet, which is will mature to height of 60 feet, growing 2-3 feet per year. Total of the tree face to our buildings is just 36, compared to 172, which was presented by architect on the drawing I saw. Now, based on this drawing, they show us high of 10 feet, correct? Retaining wall. Now, this size, very similar to size of this tree, which is also 12 feet. As I mentioned to you, they planning to plant 12 feet or 6 feet tree. This is gonna be first year. This tree gonna come in 30 years. Take a look here on my drawing. You can easily see same tree. Unfortunately,
Let me just, I want to clarify for the record. So now, as part of Exhibit O, on the back side, in addition to the photographs, you have a hand-drawn diagram. Did you draw that diagram?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what is depicted in the diagram? It looks to me that it is a similar type cross-section as what's been identified as Exhibit A3, but to your hand drawing and your dimensions that you're proposing, correct?
This is made in scale. 1 feet equal 5 feet. 1 inch, 5 feet. This is 12 foot tree right there. In next year, it's gonna be 15 feet. Take a look here. 20 feet and 35 feet is gonna be only in 30 years. And if you stay on our deck, you're gonna see all of them, even during first 15 years.
And just how it's drawn in your depicting, and I understand why it was drawn this way, but I just want to clarify, it shows the retaining wall as originally proposed, not as proposed in Exhibit A3, where they have proposed now to move the retaining wall. And I understand you didn't know that at the time, but I just want to clarify for the record, that drawing shows the original position of the retaining wall?
Yes, but you see, I took my tree, which is same size as they, and put it here on the top, as they shows you. And this is high of the tree right now at time of planting. Okay, now the next. If all we asking them, these new trees will not be sufficient to mitigate noise and lighting impacts. We request the preservation of the existing wood trees, which is 60 foot high right now. This is 60 foot in scale. And it's gonna, if they're gonna put this kind of trees, it's gonna look completely different if they save these trees. But in this case, they need to move their building far from us. Next, we ask that the proposed building be moved as far as possible from our boundary line. To achieve this, the developer can construct underground parking, as we have on our property, and in this case, they will save above ground parking space, and they can definitely move their buildings. Also, they can build an underground detention system or connect to the township's stormwater system line. This also will allow them to increase buildable area for the buildings. We request that all construction be moved at least 100 feet from our homes in accordance with the zoning regulation. The proposed building can be moved closer to Texas Road based on 100 feet zoning data, rather than the current plan, which places them 230 feet away from Texas Road, bringing construction 130 feet close to us. Thank you for your consideration of our concerns.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else would like to?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I did want to just mention one thing. Before you leave, Mr. Lachowski?
Yes.
You did hand out a handout that was left on top of the dais for the board. Are you looking to submit this, or is this from you, or is this from somebody else? This was left in front in.
Number one, this is mine.
Yeah.
This is second speaker, third and fourth speaker speeches.
So
And this is signature of each resident of our board with the picture, the
Okay.
staging.
So this is from multiple members of the public who are going to speak.
Yes.
We need to give a copy of that to the applicant's attorney. Do you have a copy, or do you need? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
And are you making any reference to any of the document, in your testimony this evening before the board, are you making any specific reference to any of the documents in here that relate to your documents?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just identify which ones they are and what? I just want to make sure that's clarified, so the board knows what it's looking at.
This is all signature from all members.
Okay, so it has a signatures from all the members, which will affect everybody.
Yes. And this is, mine is number 1. Next, gonna be this one, then this and that. This is mine.
Okay, so
Other
the-
people, they show
all right,
you-
so there's a
This
page
is
within,
mine.
it looks like it's the 4th page in, that's
Fourth
dated
one.
March 27th, 2025.
My name is on
Financial
it.
statement, okay. Well, I just want to make sure, it's for the, there's a record being kept, so I'm just trying to do and protect it so that everyone understands. And so the other documents that are in here are going to be from other speakers that are going to come before the board, aside from the these signatures that were submitted.
So Joe, I'm looking at this, and the May 20th, 24 letter, for its content and signatures, should not be accepted by the board. As you know, a petition is hearsay, and it can't be. To the extent that these other letters, that members of the public are here and speak to them, I have no issue with them being submitted to the board.
I understand and agree, and just so everyone's aware, while the board appreciates, signatures and petitions being submitted, but the law in New Jersey is a planning board cannot consider any evidence that's not presented before it at the public hearing. So the actual petition, even though it might be signed by everybody and people who aren't here, the board can only consider evidence and information that's provided by those who come up to the dais. So I just want to make sure it's clear, and that's what the objection that was made by the applicant's attorney.
I would point out that I actually submitted the very same letter with signatures to the board for the purpose of demonstrating that we had communications with
No,
the neighbors.
I appreciate that. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. That's 01. Oh, yeah. No, the only reason I'm
Well,
hesitating
like
is
if
because...
Mr. Greenberg comes up, let's have him put it into
Yeah,
the record.
let's do each one individual, because that way it's clear for the record. So the 4th page on the packet that was from Ms. Slavowski, dated March 27th, that's going to be 02. And then we'll just mark each one of these individually. If anyone comes up to the mic that has a letter that's in here that wants it part of the evidence, you have to identify it, let me know, and we'll mark it. Okay? Thank you.
Good.
Yes, sorry.
I just want to remind you that the meeting ends at 10:30, so if you have more than speaker, okay?
This is exactly what happened.
No, it's, you're allowed to speak, okay, but these people are volunteers and they have lives too, so.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But at the last meeting, we ran out of time also.
Yeah, hang on a second. Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, just
Yeah.
a little order so Angela could hear.
Sure, no problem. My name is Jack McInerney, McInerny. I live at 12 Sandra Court, and for the past 45 years, my wife Judy and I have been proud residents, taxpayers, and voters in Old Bridge, and I stand before you today as a member of the Madison Crossing community to express our deep concerns regarding the proposed development of this development. The property is currently owned by the Township of Old Bridge, and we feel it is imperative that the planning board prioritize the well-being of existing residents and taxpayers over new developments. Specific concerns, landscaping and buffer zones. We recommend planting faster-growing trees, such as, we looked it up, such as an Italian cypress or a lobololly pine, that is spelled Lobolly. I knew you'd smile at that one. Any which can grow 2 to 3 feet or more annually and can reach heights of 40 to 60 feet. planting and would provide a much more substantial buffer. Additionally, planting these trees in the staggered pattern, as they mentioned before, rather than a straight line, will allow for greater horizontal and vertical growth, enhancing the buffer effect. These are more costly, but while these options are more costly, the value of our privacy and our quality of life is immeasurable. Furthermore, given the significant number of trees slated for removal, I understand at the last meeting they said something like 600 trees were being removed. We would like to have we propose that the bill to provide an allowance for us to plant additional trees on our property and also on the line of their property going back in back of building number 2 in a straight line towards the wetland. Fire safety concerns. In light of recent devastating fires in Los Angeles, we are increasingly anxious about the proximity of the proposed development to our community. Regardless of what the fire department has said to you, this close proximity raises significant concerns, and the U.S. Forest Service has now come out with new regulations, I understand, recommending that an increased distance between structures with an increased distance required on slopes, such as the one up there right now. We urge the planning board to mandate a wider buffer zone, even more than that, between our residences and the new development to enhance fire safety. That was put out by HVAC system concerns. My understanding is that the individual units in each apartment or dwelling is going to be internal. But what about, my question is about the HVAC units being utilized for the hallways and walkways inside of the main buildings. So specifically, we're concerned how they're going to be installed, specifically their efficiency ratings and associated noise levels. Higher efficiency units typically operate more quietly. For instance, some central air units have noise levels operating at 50 decibels, some are at 70 decibels. We urge the planning board to consider mandating the use of a specific low noise, high efficiency HVAC units to minimize auditory disruption. I'm the second speaker, and I signed that paper. In conclusion, we ask that your decision reflects responsibility to your fellow Old Bridge homeowners. We are your fellow Old Bridge homeowners, and demonstrate respect for our community and the character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Before you leave, just to clarify, there was a letter, appears to you, 2 pages, that was identified. Looks like a lot of what you testified to. Do you want that marked for introduction to the record as 03?
Absolutely. Okay. That would be very nice of you. Thank you.
Do you want me to get Mike up real quick to talk about the common area?
Yeah, there was a question.
I think that's been
Mr.
asked
Chairman, there's a
twice.
question regarding the air conditioning units. So
Okay.
The applicant answer that.
I'm good?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes.
The air conditioning units serving the common areas, ground floor and the 2 floors above, will be self-contained units as well, will be limited to any kind of exterior noise, similar to the way we're shielding the units around the perimeter from the units.
You got to say.
The units serving the interior common areas are going to be similar in the units that are being used around the perimeter. They're going to be self-contained inside the building. It'll be designed in the same system that we're using for the individual units. On the interior of the building. There'll be a utility closet created with the access and ducted to the exterior.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. I'm Dr. Joel Edmond. I did submit a letter that's in the packet, okay? And
Before you start, you want that marked?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
on the second page of the packet, there's a two-page letter from Dr. Edmund.
Edmund.
And we're going to mark that as Exhibit 04.
Okay. And my name is spelled Joel, Joel, Edmund, Edman. I'm residing at 11 Hernandez Court in Madison Crossing Development. I'm a retired pediatrician, having practiced pediatrics in Middletown for over 40 years. My wife and I have been residents of Old Bridge for 19 years. I'd like to formally object to the proposed variance and waiver relief request that would allow construction beyond setback requirements at the property to be known as the Villas of Merle's Corner. As a resident and property owner directly impacted by this project, my wife and I have significant concerns regarding the effects on our privacy and overall enjoyment of our home. Our home backs up to the proposed development. We paid a premium for a lot that backed up to the woodlands. That value would now be diminished if those variances are granted.
I would object to that statement, Mr. Chairman. The value of homes and the fact that he allegedly paid a premium for a lot that backs up to a developable piece of property is not relevant.
Okay, fine. I'd actually like to refer to Exhibit A3 that's up on the slide there. And if you look at that figure standing on the deck of the Madison Crossing development on the right side, that's actually our home. And the trees, I appreciate this extended barrier that's been presented today. However, it's going to start out at 9 feet. So I'm going to be looking directly at the gentleman on the third floor of the new villas. And it's going to take 10 years before those trees grow out. I'm 72 years old, so, yeah. Anyway, the current zoning regulations are in place in part to protect current residents. Granting this variance would negatively affect my property as well as those of my neighbors. I urge the board to deny this request in order to uphold the intent of the existing zoning laws and preserve the rights of current Old Bridge residents. I thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns.
Thank you.
Hi,
Your
my name is
name?
Alice Greenberg. I'm the fourth speaker on that list.
Okay, so the first page of the packet is yours, and do you want that marked as well?
Yes.
All right, we'll mark that as Exhibit 05.
GRI NBERG, Alex Greenberg. GRI NBERG. Okay, so my name is Alex Greenberg. I am the current board president of Madison Crossing. And before you vote on this project, like the board planner just said, the picture is worth 1,000 words. I would like the board personally come and visit the property and see how close those buildings are to our property line and our development. I mean, if you look closer, they're probably going to be where the township sign is. Allison here mentioned under C2 standard, a variance is permitted when one of the purposes of the MLUL would be advanced from a deviation from the bulk requirement, and the benefit from the variance outweighs any detriment to the public goods. Importantly, the benefit from the grant of a C2 variance cannot benefit the property owner only. Instead, it must actually benefit the community and serve as a better zoning alternative for the property. Even if we believe you meet one of two standards above, it's also important that C variance cannot impose a substantial detriment to the public goods or substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the township master plan or zoning ordinance. Substantial detriment to the public goods involved a consideration of the impact of the variance and will have on nearby property. You must be certain that your development purpose will not damage the character of the surrounding neighborhood. So can you, actually Allison, can you please explain me how is that going to benefit Madison Crossing community?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask Allison questions. And as I pointed out earlier, the bulk variance standard that this gentleman is citing is not applicable to the setback area. It's governed by your redevelopment plan.
Okay.
So when he's finished speaking,
Right, okay.
if Alice wants to
So-
address it, I'll allow her to amplify her findings.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so basically, in fact, I believe it's actually quite opposite. It will destroy the residents' quality of life and their property value. Based on this law that I just read you, it's clear that the variance cannot be approved. We have 228 units, approximately 500 residents, who voted for you guys to represent us. So now we're looking for you guys to vote no for this variance and preserve Madison Crossing quality of life. That's basically it.
Thank you, thank you. Do you want to answer?
I mean,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yes, you can go next. I would just want to see if the applicant wants to provide an answer to the question that was raised.
yeah. Is there anything that you want to add, Allison, to your testimony or amplify from earlier?
Just to clarify, that building setback is not a variance. It's not addressed under the municipal land use law criteria. It's a design exception from the redevelopment plan, which does not require that it benefits off-site conditions. The only two variances are the building facade length and the setback between the building and the parking.
Thank you. You're next. We're getting close to the witching hour.
Yeah, I know. I'll talk fast. Frank Benintendo, Frank Benintendo, Benintendo. I'm a resident at Madison Crossing. I'm the ex-board president. I have two questions only. One is to the traffic control. We know that Texas Road does flood. When you speak to the county, will you take that into consideration that Texas Road does flood during heavy rains? And in widening it, you're going to be taking out that trench that runs the water out off of that property.
I can answer, but maybe Scott, the engineer, give you a
Okay.
So with regards to the flooding conditions that are potentially occurring along Texas Road, that's a county issue, and I would certainly suggest that you reach out to the county engineering department and voice your concerns with them. This applicant has no obligation to address any flooding conditions on a county roadway. Our obligation is to make sure we don't aggravate any existing condition, and our site plan does not aggravate any condition. Our application with the county will go through another drainage review with their local engineers, and they will confirm that we are not creating any adverse conditions with respect to that.
Okay, I have another question, and I looked at the plans. We do have two drainage pipes that drain into that wetlands, right at the point where they're building that home. When they put that retaining wall up, will those be draining pipes that go into the wetlands be compromised? And I am not an engineer, but I'm going to bring it up. I want to bring these two pictures into evidence.
So you got to give a copy to the applicant's attorney. Yep. And then we'll, now, just for record-keeping purposes, once you get back to the mic.
Thank you.
Oh, did you need a? No.
Do you want to keep a copy?
All right, so we're going to mark this as Exhibit 06, I believe we're up to.
There's another one. Another drain on this side. I gave two.
Now, can you just identify this, what this is a picture of?
Okay, at the base, at the back end of McGuire Court, going towards the property line, where their retaining wall, I think, ends, there will be two pickleball courts on their property. Now, those drain out into that wetlands at that point.
So the angle that this photo is taken from, it's looking into Madison?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
in the on their property looking into Madison Crossing. I'll give you this one. I only have one copy. This is my notes.
So are we marking this as an Exhibit 2, or? Okay. Okay. Well, you can't just tell me, we're gonna have to present it to everybody, so. First let the applicant's attorney see it, make sure he doesn't have any objections to it. After,
There's one here, one here. There's retaining wall ends. During construction, will they be compromised?
No, and we are aware of those. I'm sorry.
yes.
Okay, so.
First off, we're gonna mark that,
Okay,
all right, we're going to mark
Yeah,
that as
okay.
exhibit 007, so when you're done, you need to give it to me. and
Exhibit
then you can ask
07
your
is showing the
question.
position of the two drainage pipes. The question is, will they be compromised during construction? Because those drainage pipes move water out of Madison Crossing into that wetlands. And if they're compromised during construction or after that retaining wall is put into place, that could affect Madison Crossing.
So
I didn't see it on the drawings when I looked.
we are aware of it. It is on our site plans. It's on the grading plan and the utility plans. It is an existing flared end section that does discharge water onto our property. It's actually sitting on our property. It's not on the Madison Crossing property itself. Our plans propose to relocate that, redirect it away from the pickleball court and indirectly into the wetland area. So there will be no compromising of that structure. It's going to be rebuilt and relocated.
You can have it.
Yeah, I need it, now that it's in the record, I need a copy. And I appreciate that, thank you.
I just have one question.
Wait, no, the other gentleman was waiting.
And that's all I have at this time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Norman Kabensky, Khabensky. I live in 10 Delhi Court. I'd like to bring to your concern based on this picture. Look for this tree, right? So my question, from the retaining wall to the tree, what's the distance? Who can tell me?
From the retaining wall to what tree? The evergreen tree?
What's shown in this picture?
Roughly 10 feet.
10
Roughly
feet.
10 feet, yes.
Okay, and this tree will be 40 to 60 feet long, right? So think about this. If these roots would come on, would it destroy a retaining wall or not? Think about this, right? Another way, 40 to 60 feet long, right? And how distant from this deck to the tree? Tell me. 15 feet, I guess, right? Or 13, I don't know, because I can see. 13, right? 1 tree. So if this tree would fall down, guess what happened to the side? So what's the distance supposed to be from the tree to the deck? Think about this. So my understanding, this is not suitable to make this design. That's what I wanted to say. And also, what I'd like to add in the finish, we will not give up for this. We would address to the press, to the news, and we will fight for this to make sure it will be right and nice decision to make sure all people will be happy, not only these people or us people. And also, not my concern, but look for this person on first floor. What he would see, retaining wall, right? It's supposed to be a very happy person, right? That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your concern. I guess you're gonna make the right decision. And I heard people from all other side would tell us nice fairy tales, but it's not nice fairy tales. It's just opposite. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before the, no, you can come up, but I just, we are going beyond what we originally stated we would. No, and we want to make sure we get everyone's comments, so just to kind of get an idea, could you raise your hand if you intend to come up, just so we know whether or not we'll be able to finish tonight, or whether we need to continue? Okay, so we have two, yes. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, even though we're past 10:30, I would recommend that we continue to make sure we get the remaining people who want to come up to speak opportunity.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jay Kurtz, McGowan Court. Just one, Jay Kurtz, it's common spelling. I'm sorry, Kurtz? Yeah. K-U-R-T? Yeah. One question, at the entrance to the new development, on Texas Road, is there going to be a traffic light?
No. No.
Hi, Ricky Swede, SWEDE. So with all of these issues, is this the last piece of property that Old Bridge has to offer for developers? I mean, we're trying to squeeze something this big into a site that's shoehorned in. And we're fighting it. They're trying to squeeze it in. All these representatives represent the builder, the owners. Is this the last parcel that Old Bridge has to offer? That's my question. Because go somewhere else. I don't understand.
Sure. The, number one, it's not a use variance, so we don't have to prove that the property is particularly suitable for it. The legal standard is when there is a use variance, which this is not, that you would have to demonstrate the particular suitability of the property. So whether there is other, and even in that instance, whether there is other available properties or not, is not relevant to that analysis.
Well,
And
it's relevant to us.
I understand it's very important to you, believe me.
And
But
you have an investment, I
when
understand that.
when you talk about shoehorning in all these problems, squeezing things in, you're mischaracterizing the development. It is a 13-foot difference from your design standard. That is it.
13 foot.
13 feet. It's 50. We're proposing 37 on a design standard.
That
Otherwise,
is a lot.
otherwise, it is not shoehorned in. It is not squeezed in. That is the only standard that is coming up right
Can't
now.
put the building towards the front of Texas Road because of the wetlands. You're shoehorning it back to us, closer to our buildings. That's shoehorning it, okay? I understand that you represent the builder, the developer, you've had years and lots of expense, but, I mean, surely there's got to be a better development, a better parcel of land in Old Bridge if you have to build that doesn't give you that kind of wetlands restrictions. Thank you. Because we'll still keep fighting it.
Well, before it repeats, does anyone else want to come up that has not had a chance to speak?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well,
Okay, you had mentioned before that if this is,
just identify who
my
you
name
are
is
again.
Jack McInerney, McInerney. Okay, so if the board here turns this down, we'd be very happy, but we feel bad about it, but sorry. But if it is turned down and the state does decide to come in and the state mandates that it has to be affordable housing, what's the maximum number of units that you could put there? Because it's still going to be at wetlands.
Well, Vina, if I may just answer that one. And I will be able to say, I'm not just the planning board attorney, I'm the special affordable housing counsel for the township, so I can say this with authority. We don't know, and I couldn't tell you, but as the planner had testified earlier, you know, at minimum, the state would require a density of 8 units per acre. That's a minimum. It would only go up from there. And what she was making the point of is when you can't fit it in because of wetlands or whatever type of restrictions, they let you go up. And that is a true statement. Does that mean it's definitely going to be the site, or the township would roll over and allow the site? That's not what we're saying, but we're saying sometimes it's outside of our hands, no matter how hard we fight, and it's a possibility. That was, I think, the point that was being raised, but not that it's a definite outcome.
Okay. And what that gentleman there was saying about the trees before, as high as, I have removed many trees on my properties before, and I do know that as high as a tree grows, that's how deep it goes also. So those roots from those 60-foot trees are going to go down and out, and they're going to knock that retaining wall down. And that's from my personal experience.
Only one person speaks at a time. Who's at the mic?
Anyway, I thank you for your time, and by the way, thank you for volunteering to do this job. I don't want it.
Yeah.
All right, last comment if you come to the mic. Oh, sorry.
That's all right, that's all right.
Vadim Luhovitsky again, Luhovitsky. Based on the previous speaker, those tree roots can destroy our underground sprinkler system, our communications, our pipes, wherever. And also, I'm personally okay with affordable housing, even if it's gonna be 100 units over there. My question is this: who gonna be? Will you able to find investor who gonna build 70 affordable units? Is it possible? Who gonna finance it? If developer gonna finance it?
Well, that's a theoretical, but I can tell you, there's state financing, there's state funding, and there's a lot of money in affordable
It's okay,
housing.
let's then find it. But we just now our situation is next. We just would like to stay 100 feet away as the zoning required to be away from the next community. This is it.
You can't,
No,
you can't do it from there.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman, can I just,
that-
I just want to correct the record. That gentleman, it keeps indicating that it's a 100-foot setback requirement, and we're at 37 feet. It's a 50-foot setback requirement, and we're at 37 feet
Okay.
from the boundary line. That's correct, 50 feet.
All right, this is not an ongoing discussion outside. If you want to have further discussions outside of this board hearing, that's fine, but that's not how we operate here, or how we're legally allowed to operate here. So, Mr. Chairman, I believe we've allowed the public come up. We've heard all the comments, questions that were raised.
I just want to finish. He was saying it's only 13 feet. What's the percentage? 13 out of 38 or 50? It's a large percentage. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Clauser?
Thank you. Yeah, so the public portion is closed.
public portion is closed.
Our evidence presentation is complete. I would ask if the board carry the application for a vote. I would like to absorb the comments and notes that we've taken from the public before we decide that this is the plan that we want to ask you to vote on. If we do make no further resubmissions or provide any additional information, I would simply come up and provide a summation and ask the board to vote at your next meeting. But I want to give my team and frankly the public the due consideration for all the things that we've heard before I say to this board, vote on that. Maybe we're going to come back and say vote on that, but I'm not going to. They all spoke and said very important things, and I want to make sure that my team has the opportunity to absorb that and say, Peter, if we can or can't do anything.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with that. I think the board members want to have an opportunity to listen, consider what would the, all the documentation that was submitted to them, in consideration of all the documentation that was submitted by the public as well as the public concerns before a vote is taken. So I would concur with carrying this. Vina, what would the date this? So this would be carried, members of the public. I hope everyone's still here. If anyone has left, please pass the information along. This meeting is being carried to April 24th. At that time, if has been no change by the applicant, then the board will hear closing arguments from the applicant's attorney and make a vote. If they did make modifications, well, then they're going to present new witnesses to testify to those modifications, and you'll have an opportunity to question and comment on those after that additional testimony. So no further notice is going to be provided. We will reconvene here on this application on April 24th, either for a vote or for further testimony for any modifications.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.